Pleased to say I'm joined by my colleague Ian Field, who we're normally in the muddy, grassy terrain of cyclocross together, but increasingly we're bringing you brilliant stage races. And this is the first of this week. It's in a busy week for stage racing. They're following exactly the same road northward, E45. It's the E45. Don't be bored by that because it's going to be rather spectacular. It's the only stage of this year's Arctic Race of Norway which finishes with a finishing lap. 2 laps of 15 kilometres, a climb both times up the Boskop summit. That could easily be in the rolling hills of Flanders, couldn't it? But no, it's in the far north of Norway, well above the Arctic Circle. Boskop summit, both times up, and then finishing up the generous slope of Alta, up to the highest city, by the way, the most northerly city in the world that has over 10,000 inhabitants. This was the riders, a peloton, quite compact peloton, just over 100 riders in fact, setting off at 2 p.m. this afternoon from Kautokeino and onto that road right there. That is the road, and don't be put off by this because it's going to roll through some of the most incredible scenery. This is the road riding northward, the E45 that they'll follow to bring them to that finishing circuit. So this is stage one of the 2023 Arctic Race of Norway in its 10th anniversary between Kautokeino and Alta. We're joining these pictures live now, and you can see a breakaway of 6 riders have just over 2 minutes of lead. They've never had a big lead, about 3.5 minutes at one point, and I will just inform you of who they are. They are Torbjørn Ruud of the Norwegian national team on the left there in the red. Ben Perry just going out of our shot to the right there, the Canadian riding for Human Powered Health. Fergus Browning is the Australian in the Trinity racing kit we've just seen going back there, and there are 2 FDG Continental riders, so that means the FDG under-23 team effectively. They are Trym Brensæter of Norway and Lewis Bauer, the Kiwi. Have I missed anyone? No, that is all 6 of the riders in the lead. The teams in this race, by the way, are made up of only 6 riders anyway. And the first slightly unfortunate news to bring you is that last year's winner, despite the fact we've seen him in our team presentation there, Andreas Leknesson, the Norwegian, leading Team DSM Firmenich, who are leading the peloton here, as you can see, is a non-starter this morning due to sickness overnight, despite the fact that we saw him in shots there, I think yesterday, picking up his Midnight Sun jersey that he won 1 year ago. I said I am joined by Ian Field, and he's listening in to all I've been telling you about. But Ian, that is first of all, it's great to be sharing this race with you. I was on this race last year, and I know we're both in for such a treat. But it's also a great shame not to see Leknesson start. Such is his talent, isn't it?
It really is. I think both of us would have been the first to highlight that name on our start list, looking ahead to this race. And yes, disappointing for the race, disappointing for Leknesson, and disappointing for his team. Obviously that he couldn't even start the first stage today, but what we both said to each other beforehand, before we knew about Leknesson not starting, was just how strong the DSM team is that has been brought to this Arctic Race of Norway. So plenty of firepower left in that team, and yeah, already working on the front of this one. They've got plenty of names, as we'll go through over the course of this stage. Plenty of names within that team who could still take the overall, and also stages along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got 2 stars in there, just staying focused on DSM for a moment. 2 stars of the very recent World Championships, of course, just at the weekend. And big stars as well, Kevin Vermarke and Matthew Dinham, both of whom, and I'd forgotten they're both DSM teammates. They ride for different countries internationally, of course. Vermarke, the American, and Matt Dinham, the Aussie. They were both in that long breakaway that survived into Glasgow, and Dinham himself in very, very good form. Not only was he out there in the breakaway coming into Glasgow, but he hung on and finished 7th as well. So even just those 2 indicating the kind of form, as Ian has mentioned, that is in that DSM Firmenich team. Now, let's focus on these 6 for a second, because they're just rounding in on the first classification point of the day in Massey. It is the first of our bonification sprint points, so there are 3, 2 and 1 points for the blue jersey competition, the points competition, but also 3, 2 and 1 bonus seconds. So let's keep an eye on this and see what they do. 2 riders in here from the same team, in the FDG Continental team, and let's see if they look to set this up. What do you reckon, Ian? Right off, who's going to go for this? They all look a bit keen, don't they?
I'd have thought they're all going to go for this one.
They are, by the looks of it, as well. It's the Coupe rider in the blue, and it's one of the DSM riders as well. Just to see his number to see which one of them it is, because we've only just picked this up. He's got it. Right, I'm just going to track back and see who I think that was. They're both, I think, because it's so cold, or cool, shall we say, it's about, 12 degrees? Lots of these riders, even in the breakaway, still hanging on to their numbers. So that was Trim Brensetter, there he is. Oh no, Lewis Bauer. Hang on a minute, what's going on with my numbers here? You will forgive me, folks at home, while I'm just... these naughty riders here, and they will ride along without wearing their numbers. Sorry, Trim Brensetter is a bit further back. That was Lewis Bauer, the Kiwi. I think I even called him an Aussie. This is a bad start,
he'll
isn't
forgive
it?
you.
Yes, I'm sure he will. The New Zealander, who gets the 3 bonus seconds and 3 points. So he is technically on the road. The leader now on the road in the general classification, and he's definitely the leader in that blue jersey competition. If you're, folks at home, if you're not used to the Arctic Race of Norway and how it works, it's still a very young race. We've only had 9 of them so far. Let me explain to you. It's a very simple race, and it's maintained that simplicity throughout as well. It's 4 stages. They're all road stages, no time trials this year. And we effectively have 4 important jerseys. The leader's jersey, as it should be, is yellow, but it's a kind of, they call it the Midnight Sun jersey, so it has an orangey hue to the base of it. Dare I say it, it's quite Uno X, which seems appropriate for the Norwegian and Danish team, who are here, of course. Midnight Sun jersey is the leader's jersey for general classification. The white jersey, which actually has red sleeves to it, is the best young rider. It's for the best rider under the age of 25. Ian, you know how I feel about that. I always think it should be 23 nowadays, or maybe even 21, but it's under 25 in this race. Then there's the blue points jersey, which is what those points were taken for just now in that sprint. That's our points jersey for intermediate sprints and the finishes. There's 15 down to 1 points at each of the finishes as well. And then there is the most beautiful classification jersey, I think, in world cycling. It is the peacock jersey for the best climber, as won last year by Stephen Bassett, the American rider, who went on the break on stage 1, got that lovely jersey and decided he liked it so much he'd keep going in the breaks and hoovering up more points. They're the 4 leaders' jerseys. There is a Viking jersey as well, as voted for by fans of the race, but I think they only get to wear that on the podium. It's quite a nice jersey as well. But anyway, dare I say it, Ian, this is quite a predictable breakaway as well, isn't it, for this race? If you'd said to me, what kind of break do you think we'd had? I'd have said 6, and it would be this kind of makeup. But it's that's professional racing for you, I suppose, isn't it, as well?
It is. It's currently a bit of a stereotypical first opening stage of a stage race like this. The riders are dealing with a headwind all the way from that start town up to the finishing circuits, so an awful long way up into this headwind. So yeah, perhaps why the average speed isn't quite as high as we would imagine, especially with the new age of cycling, where they seem to be attacking the races from further and further out and making them as hard as possible from the very first stage. But interesting to see Jayco, Alula, Uno X and DSM doing the majority of the work on the front of this one. It's just pegging the breakaway around a minute 45, 2 minutes. It's just been hovering around that since they more or less got away. So interesting to see who Team Jayco Alula will be working for today. They bring a strong squad. One of the interesting names that I highlighted, I'm sure you did as well, the young Hamish Mackenzie gets his stagiaire chance there. He's the 18-year-old who came 3rd at the under-23 individual time trial in Glasgow, who really captured the hearts of many who were watching that day. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do. And from a personal point of view, I'm looking forward to see the return of Zdenek Stybar.
Yes,
who
absolutely.
had a big operation on that pinched artery within the hip joint. A fairly common kind of injury for cyclists. Pauline Ferrand-Prévot had the same issues. Voss has had the same issues in the past. He's been training very hard. I follow him on social media, and he's been putting in big hours. In fact, almost riding from his home in Belgium down to his hometown in the Czech Republic on a number of occasions.
Amazing.
So interesting to see how he comes back. That's his first race back since Amstel Gold.
Wow. Well, knowing what he's like, Ian. I guess he'll be itching to get involved this week, Steve Barr, as well. At the age of 37, I'll keep an eye on that. Good one to point out early on as well. Nice to have, obviously, a national team, because not all these races at this level. This is the second rung down, if you like, the second division of world cycling, although many of the world's best teams and best riders are represented here. This is a 2-point pro stage race, the highest level being the World Tour, of course, and point pro is the next level down. But this is a busy old week as we watch ourselves rolling through the breakaway here, Ian, isn't it? And it can only be to blame that those World Championships, those Super Worlds as they've been called, the combined UCI World Championships up in Scotland, have to be responsible for this, because in this 1 week we've got 4 major, I think they're all point pro races as well, 4 major 4 to 6 day stage races all in the same week. Of course, they're all here at the home of cycling on Eurosport GCN. It's the Vuelta a Burgos, which is 6 days long. Rob Hatch and Matt Stevens bringing you that. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think I was doing my sound check, I was going out over the top of it, so I'm technically covering 2 races in 1 week. The Tour of Denmark, 6 days long, is also running through this week. Jose Bean and Brian Smith bringing us that. And the Tour de la Moselle as well, also 6 days long. Hannah Walker and Pippa York bringing us that right here. So it's a busy old week for 1 week stage races in a time where, of course, things have been very quiet. If you weren't selected for the World Champs and you weren't riding the Tour de France, as a male professional, it's been a pretty quiet few weeks. I think that might show in some of the riders' form as well, who've been itching to get going in this race. Just while we watch the break rolling through, it might be worth also me filling people in on exactly what happened last year. The top 5, as I said, Andreas Leknesund, the Norwegian, who's gone on to finish 8th in the Giro this year as well, so really backing up his stage racing pedigree. The DSM rider who has recently announced to be going to Uno X next year, so that's going to be a really big move for them, bolstering their all Norwegian and Danish makeup. Andreas Leknesund, as Ian pointed out to me just before we came on air, not starting today, non-starter, falling sick overnight as well, so a real shame because he's such an exciting talent. The top 5 were Andreas Leknesund, Hugo Uhl, the Canadian for Israel Premier Tech, Nicolas Conchi of Alpecin de Koenig, not here, Axel Zingle of Cofidis, also not here, and Victor Lafay, not here. Cofidis are here, but Alpecin de Koenig aren't, and that's a shame because they were really exciting in this race last year, particularly on that final stage where they threw absolutely everything at DSM. But this is only the 10th edition of this very, very young race, so we are set for new stage winners and definitely another new winner overall. There is only one former winner of this race in this field, and that is Dylan Teuns, who was the winner in 2017. You never can quite tell with him, Ian, can you, Dylan Teuns? But I would say, based on recent form of the last 12 months, he might not be a general classification threat this week, which almost certainly means that he'll be the winner on Sunday. But it is packed with talent, this, and it's a funny old race. If we look back through the Palmares as well, the kind of riders, Leknesund, Ben Hermans in 2021, Lutsenko, Chernetsky, Teuns, Moscon, Taramay, Kreiswijk and Hushot. What a weird mix of riders, isn't it, Ian? So, I mean, I don't know what you think, looking back through that history, what kind of rider on general classification does this race suit?
I think that list of riders just shows that the kind of the different iterations of the same race that we've had over the years. They've obviously had some years where they haven't gone into the hills, they haven't used the short punchy climbs that they have on offer, therefore Tor Hushoff taking out the win, not known for his climbing prowess. And then obviously we've had some hillier versions even in previous years, with some out-and-out climbers being able to take the wins. This year, definitely going to suit the climbers. This first stage, punchy climbers, kind of your rouleurs, the sprinters that can get over shorter, steeper climbs. So it'll be really interesting to see over the course of this week who comes out on top, because, yeah, you mentioned climbers and Cofidis previously. Guillaume Matin, 10th overall at the Tour de France, 6th overall at the Dauphiné just this year. So talking of out-and-out climbers, he's going to be up there when if it comes down to some of those longer climbs.
Yeah, definitely. He had such a quiet Tour de France this year, and yet he's almost seemed to have stopped doing the yo-yoing that he's done in previous years of being up into the top 5 and then dropping outside the top 10 and then coming back again. Seems to be riding much more consistently as well. This is a race, though, that is quite heavy on the bonus seconds. Because there aren't any massive hills, those bonus seconds of 3, 2 and 1 at each of these sprint bonification points, of which there are normally 2 a day. No, actually, that's not true. I do apologise. There's 3 a day most days. We've got 3 today as well. And today's 2 come quite late on as well. So, a total of 9 seconds at a maximum could be gained before you even got to the finish line. And on the finish line itself, there is 10, 6 and 4. So consistency well rewarded in this race, which is why with last year's also quite a lot of uphill finishes last year. We saw the likes of Axel Zingle, who won stage 1 last year, finishing right up in general classification in 4th place as well, because he was good at picking up those bonus seconds. So the Hrushov thing, winning the first edition, is quite indicative, I guess, Ian, in that you need to be able to sprint at these intermediate points and then still have something left for the finish as well, unless there's a different breakaway every day that hoovers things up. It will be interesting. It is a small pack, though, isn't it? As we look at them, just over 100 riders. And I think it's got to be, some of that has to be to do with the way these teams have had to spread their riders across the different races. I mentioned Alpecin de Koenig not doing this. I think they're riding in Denmark. Must admit, I'm struggling to keep over the track of everything. As I say this, you know there'll be people around the world watching all 4 races on a quad split screen, don't you? Absolutely no. If that's you, take a photo of it, tweet it to us at Jez Cox, at FieldECX, because I'd love to see it. But I absolutely know there'll be someone listening into this with the sound of the other 3 commentators over the top of us watching all 4 screens. How you do it, I do not know. Anyway, as we go further up this E45, I'm not great with numbers, I have to try and remember that. It is the same road, as I say, that heads all the way northward. We're going to get less and less trees as well as we get off. It's a little bit more kind of green down here. The further north we go throughout this race, the higher above the tree line we go, continuing to head northward with each stage. This is a race that takes its green credentials very seriously as well. So I know this is something we've talked about before, Ian, but it is nice. I know it sounds like it's obvious, but it's not. It's nice to see the stages finishing in one town and then starting nearby the next day and moving on. They're not dotting all over the place. I have to say, I'm going to point my fingers at the French, but some of the French stage races that we cover, sometimes it'd be across a whole region, but the stages are in completely different places. The riders are having to get in a bus and then travel. This is a good way to do it, and this race also prides itself on having a fully electric race convoy, all vehicles, including the vehicles that they give to the teams to strap their bikes on top of and stuff. It is fully electrified, which I know makes a few of the teams a little nervous about charging and ensuring they've got enough power to nip between groups and stuff. But as far as I'm aware, there is not a single fossil fuel burning vehicle on this race. We'll watch out for them if there is, though, but that's certainly what the race organisers point out. And particularly when we're in this part of the world where we're so near to melting ice caps and glaciers, literally, and receding coastlines as well, it's so important, isn't it? Because I don't know about you, Ian, as the next pro, looking back at our sport, at the history of it and the way it is right now, we've still got a lot of cleaning up to do, haven't we? We really have.
100%. I think it's doing kind of what we can. Obviously, our sport, fundamentally riding a bicycle, you can't get more green than that. Yet the professional side of things is on the whole terrible. And so doing things to help, it might seem small, but these small things add up. And if it's just not having long transfers after each stage, or having electric cars for the convoy, etc., it has to help. You were saying earlier about teams kind of getting caught short a little bit in terms of number of riders, but it's also the number of staff and vehicles. Say 3 or 4 soigneurs at all of those races that you mentioned, and suddenly kind of getting caught out, having to drag people in from here, there and everywhere. And for some teams this is just one race too many. And on the flip side of that, it gives, like we look at now, Trinity Racing, perhaps one of the smaller teams, it gives them a great opportunity to step up at this level of racing. a team of young guys, and there's an awful lot of young riders on the start list within other teams, stagiaring for some of the bigger teams as well, and it's a great opportunity for them to get stuck into some high quality racing and not have the pressure of maybe a huge race kind of program, but yeah, it's a chance to make a name.
Yes, that Trinity Racing team, Ian, particularly exciting as well. Very much looking forward to seeing Colombia's Camilo Gomez have a go on some of these hilly finishes as well. None of them are probably quite long enough for him, but I first came across him racing for Trinity in the Tour of Taiwan this year, Tour de Taiwan, I should say. And Camilo Gomez was very impressive, really snappy acceleration. Not unlike a, well, yeah, kind of very lightweight climber, punchy, but can sprint as well, Camilo Gomez, so watch out for him. But he's not the only one. The youngest rider in the race is Luis Bauer, who, of course, is the leader on the road right now for the Equipe Continental Groupama FDG, not to be confused with their elite senior team. That's their under-23 development team. But boy, have so many super talented youngsters come through that FDG development team in the last few years. Not least, I'm pleased to say, Ian, because we're both British commentators, young Brits, of which we have another one. Noah Hobbs, 19 years of age, comes from just down the road from me, one of those riders who's come out of the Lee Valley Youth cycling setup based there in North London. And yeah, Noah Hobbs progressing really well, particularly as a young sprinter as well, and he gets his start in this Point Pro race. I guess this is the time of year, though, isn't it? But we start to see more young riders being broken in at a higher level, test them out for the following year. That sounds exciting, but at the same time, it's quite scary, isn't it? Because it's like, okay, this is my chance to really prove myself, and some will thrive in that pressure, won't they? But some might wilt as well.
Yeah, and it's kind of, yeah, your chance, isn't it, to step up at this higher level of racing. We've already seen from him taking second on a stage of the Tour de Alsace behind Axel Laurens, who's our newly crowned under-23 road race champion. I was commentating on Tour de Leuven just the other day, and Axel Laurens made the winning break and ended up on the podium at that one as well. So shows the quality of rider that Hobbs has been up against previously within races this year. And yeah, like you say, just showing what he can do. And I think this Arctic Race Tour of Norway will suit him. Punchy, little sprinter who will be able to get over these climbs, and it'll be interesting to see what opportunities he manages to get this week.
Yes, we will keep an eye on that. You can see a little bit of light rain actually on the camera lens of our helicopter camera here, looking down on the riders. As Ian mentioned, it's still only about 12-13 degrees, and they have a headwind, which is probably also why we see a long strung out peloton, because they all want to get a bit of shelter. And the teams, as we've seen, who are quite happy to set the chasing, Uno X here leading them, but also combining with DSM and Team Jayco Alula in the white and blue. So with just over 100 kilometres to go, they continue to head their way northward. They've actually just recently turned away from the Kautokeinoelva fjord, the enormous fjord that they'd been following on their right-hand side, having set off from Kautokeino. That is the very end of it, and that's where it spills into the Kautokeino River. I'm glad that I was just waiting for the caption to come up in. I knew it was going to say something else, and I was right. I'm happy with that. That's the road they've been following, though, and they've turned away from that now. They go more kind of valley-based, increasingly kind of forested slopes off to their right, and flatter roads off to their left as they head northward. For those of you who haven't yet looked at this on a map, it is worth checking out the map, the best way to do it, I would suggest, is actually, if you've got an account, go on VeloViewer, or just go on Google Maps. Well, particularly if you were to just look up the road drive between Kautokeino and Alta, where we finish today, you'll be following this route, definitely, along this road, because it is the road that links these two places. And, I mean, I joke about us running along the same road. This is an extremely remote part of the far, far north of Europe here, well above the Arctic Circle, and understandably and rightfully, the landscape around it is unspoiled. There's one road going through it, one set of what looks like electricity pylons and telephone cables running alongside the road, and that's it. And that's part of the beauty of it as we go through this very unspoilt countryside. The further north we go as well, the deeper we get into indigenous Sami people's land, where we will see people, as we did last year, even further south, much further south than this, in traditional indigenous dress, dancing on top of the hilltops, celebrating, starting fires, in a safe way, I mean, starting fires and camping out on the hillside. And one of the things I learned, Ian, last year about Norwegian people through just being on the Arctic race and watching it was just their passionate love of being outdoors, you know, camping, fishing, exploring, and a great respect for the landscape as well, which is healthy, definitely.
It just looks a really interesting place to go and visit, perhaps, and yeah, take it all in, learn a little bit about the culture, learn a little bit about the history and kind of what happens there and what goes on. And I'm sure the riders will appreciate visiting somewhere new. I know that through my racing career, I loved going somewhere new and seeing what was kind of happening in that area of the world. And even the Norwegian riders said in the pre-race interviews that they were looking forward to going this far north, because some of them had never even been this far north in their own country. So yeah, really quite interesting as we see that lined out bunch. I said it was a headwind. It is coming from the rider's left-hand shoulder, so it is a northwesterly blowing in around 13 to 15 miles per hour today, so reasonably strong, and it just means that the peloton is lined out, and every so often when it changes a bit more to a crosswind rather than a headwind, we're going to see them all in the gutter ever so slightly. I'm sure it is the kind of wind that is strong enough that if one team went to the front and really put it in the gutter, really went hard, I'm sure on this kind of rolling road it would be hard enough to split things. But right now looks nice and controlled from DSM, Jayco Alula and Uno X all playing nicely.
I like it. Yes, it won't be that way for too long, but that is, I'm actually surprised with 100k to go in that the gap is down to a minute and a half. I'm actually surprised on day one they haven't allowed it to go a little bit more than this, but it is also only, I say only, but it is only a 4-day race. It's not like, just looking to see who the Cofidis rider there has got his buff on up round his head. No, looking to see if that's Guillaume Martin actually. He's got Hugo Tumiri behind him, Champion just behind him. I think it might be him actually. Maybe it's colder than we thought. You don't normally see that in August, do you?
I think it's one of those situations where perhaps 11, 12 degrees, it isn't the coldest, but if you've come from somewhere that's 25, 30 degrees, as some of these riders might have done from further south in Europe, then it's going to feel like a big change getting off that bus this morning and looking to find where your leg warmers are, where the buff is, where the long finger gloves are, etc. So quite a shock to the system for some of these riders.
Yeah, definitely. Not all of them were in Scotland racing in those World Championships. In fact, only 10 of these riders that are here today raced in the elite World Champs. There were some who rode in under 23s as well. I haven't tracked back and seen those numbers. So maybe 20, 25 riders in total. A few trackies as well that were competing up there in Scotland. I've just recently returned, just a matter of days ago, from Glasgow, where I was for the whole thing. Lots of you watching, of course, will have been watching it on TV. Some of you might have been there at the roadside. It was, from the grounds perspective, and I spent a whole week basically on George Square in the centre of Glasgow. It was absolutely rocking, Ian. It really, really was, as you'd hope it would be for those finishes. And obviously, I was just covering the road race events, but there was the Flatland BMX down the road. There was the Circuit Velodrome down the road as well, and then artistic cycling, indoor cycling, cycle ball, all happening within a few kilometres of each other. It was Absolutely incredible. I don't know what your thoughts and takeaways were from it, Ian. I know you're actually looking at it from all sorts of perspectives, including being a coach of some of the riders who were competing as well. What's your take? Would you have enjoyed that? And a final question, by the way, should cyclocross be in it?
At this time of year, no.
yeah. Summer cyclocross. Oh, come on, in Scotland, listen, I was there. It wasn't exactly super warm, it felt crossy at times.
When the rain came down, it felt quite cold, but on the whole, I was pleasantly surprised with the temperatures. I was there for the Elite Men's Road Race, and thoroughly enjoyed it up until the point where my guy crashed. But then, we got into George's Square for the finishing laps, and like you say, the atmosphere was just absolutely brilliant, and it was just a great event, and all the races I felt proved a worthy winner, which is what we want for a World Championships. It's not good to have the same thing every year, but I think solo winners in all the races, I think. So I think, looking back, the worthy World Champions crowned. So from my perspective, it was a brilliant event, and I'm sure the riders that participated would want this to happen again.
Yep. Well, we're looking to the hills. We can see the light wispy clouds. Thankfully, the rain that Ian mentioned earlier that had fallen a little bit overnight has held off. And that'll be welcome as well. Talking of those World Championships, there was a fair amount of rain in Scotland. I think for those who were there, it probably was a nice little stepping stone, particularly if they were coming from the warmer climes of southern Europe, making their way up to Scotland for those once every 4 years Super World Championships, and then riders making their way from there to here, or the Tour of Denmark perhaps, which runs alongside it as well. So DSM there in the black and blue, DSM Firmenich as they are now. Cofidis just behind them. And then the dark green jerseys of Equipo Calm Farmer. There are 18 teams in this race in total. 6 world teams, 8 pro teams of the second division, of which Equipo Calm Farmer is one. Teams of 6 at their biggest. And we have 3 continental teams. They are Equipe Continentale Groupama FDJ, Trinity Racing, Team Coop Repsol, which is the Danish team, who also race in kit, which I swear is almost impossible to tell apart from the Groupama FDJ kit as well, because it's dark blue with a stripe down, just offset down the middle of it. Team Coop, of course, we have riders from both of those teams in our breakaway. We've got our viewers on Eurosport just about to join us, so I'll give them a little bit of a recap of what's been happening. And then we'll start to think a little bit further ahead. There's the first of our reindeer. Well, for those of you who are just joining us, welcome to this, our live coverage of the 10th edition of the Arctic Race of Norway, the most northerly bike race in the world. And wouldn't you know it, we're in Finnmark, which previously has been known as Lapland, and this is the land of Santa and beyond, because we're going well above the Arctic Circle here in this beautiful 4-day race, the Arctic Race of Norway. Going more northerly every day, in fact, until we reach on Sunday afternoon Nordkap, the North Cape, the most northerly part of mainland Europe. It's pretty cold, the riders are wrapped up well, and we have 6 riders in the breakaway. My name is Jez Cox, and I have Ian Field with me, and we are talking you through what's now going to be the last 95 kilometres of this 173 kilometre stage between Kautokeino and Alta. Last year's winner, Andreas Leknesund, was a DNS overnight, falling ill and not starting the race. And we have these 5 riders in the breakaway. This is Ben Perry of Canada and the human-powered health team. And just behind him, the leader on the road, Lewis Bauer of New Zealand, riding for Groupama FDJ Continental, the under-23 team. Then there's that dark blue jersey of Coop and Johan Ravnui of Norway, one of 3 Norwegians in this breakaway. Also in there, Fergus Browning of Australia, riding for Trinity Racing. Trim Brensuter of Groupama FDJ Continental, the under-23 team. And Choborn Ruud of the Norwegian national team is also there. 6 riders clear, and they're being chased by this lot. It's, 94 riders or so, maybe 97 riders, something like that, when we tally it all up in that chasing peloton, who are down to one long line. They are riding northward up the E45 for 130 kilometres through some stunning landscapes. They've already turned away from one of the enormous fields here and are picking up little dotted lakes and rivers as they go further northward. The teams who are aiding the chasing in greatest number, these guys, Uno X, our entirely Norwegian and Danish team, who are spreading themselves between this race and the Tour of Denmark this week. And then this lot, DSM Firmenich, the team of our defending champion, or would have been defending champion, Andreas Leknesund, who did not start this morning. So they're down to 5 riders, but there's a super strong make-up, that team. Just sitting in behind them, Cofidis, another of our 6 world teams here. Those 6 teams being Team DSM Firmenich, Cofidis of France, Arkea Samsic, another French team, Team Jayco Alula, who are also pretty present at the front end, the Australian team, and then Astana Kazakhstan, of whom we've seen very little so far, in fact, nothing at all, in fact. And Lidl Trek, who we also haven't seen too much of. They have 5 riders here. And I think, Ian, the selections made by Lidl Trek and Astana Kazakhstan, as we look at them, and I'm going to say this now, and I'm very happy proven wrong, this is not me casting any aspersions on the riders in those makeups, but looking at them, my suspicion is we might not see too much of them either. I've just got this feeling. Then again, there's some very exciting riders in both those teams. I just don't see an obvious leader. However, this is a funny old race, isn't it, where breakaways can suddenly change the shape of this race. So we'll see. But what do you make of those? What do you make of the world teams in general, Ian, and those 2 in particular?
Well, I'm going to contradict you here.
Go on. You're going to say that you reckon Lidl Trek are going to smash it.
I've put a huge highlight on Baroncini from Lidl Trek, the under-23 world champion from 2021. Just signed for UAE, going into 24-25.
Yeah.
Super strong rider, got a good finish on him, and looked to be one of the favourites for the Italian Championships, and was struck down by a mechanical with around about 10 kilometres to go. So I'd be looking to him, and I'm sure the rest of the team will be looking after him. I can see what you mean about the rest of the team. I mean, I've put some notes down about the other riders. Bruce Denga, not finished a race since the 14th of May. Tolheg injured with tendinitis since very early in the year, but he did manage to finish the Tour of Poland recently. Vegard has got the Giro and Tour of Poland as well in his legs, but I think Baroncini, all in for him, stands a good chance, I would say, especially with Leknesund out. Israel, which Dylan Toynes is on the start line?
Yes,
is it the flesh will on Dylan Toynes of 2022 when he stormed away to win up the Mur de Huy? He won the GC here in 2017, but to be honest, just recently hasn't done too much. Free go, 3rd on a stage of the Giro, so yeah, there and thereabouts perhaps. Stevie Williams put in an awesome ride at the National Championships here in the UK, taking out 3rd place on a super hard circuit where we saw Fred Wright come out on top that day, but Williams was super attacking in that, and just recently 2nd on a stage of the Tour of Wallonie in a bit of a sprint there, so he's got a good kick on him as well. I think without Leknesund, this race has opened up, so perhaps a few more of those kind of highlighted riders that I had down as kind of top 5, top 10, they're going to be licking their lips at the prospect of taking out the GC at this one today.
Yeah, this looks like Romain Combeau, who's on the front here for DSM Firmenich, and there's an interesting bit of chat actually between him and the Uno X riders. I'm not sure they're not saying, look, you don't need to chase it back so hard. It looked like a bit of head shaking and a bit of shrugging of shoulders and stuff, but he's carrying on, Combo. I'm pretty certain it's him. That's interesting because he's there by himself. The rest of his team is sitting a little bit further back, but I've just got this suspicion in that Uno X don't want to catch this breakaway too soon. There is still 91k to go. It's coming down a few seconds at a time now, 1:27, or maybe they're happy to sit it at a minute and a half, knowing they can bring that back. I don't know, but there was definitely a bit of Bit of what you're doing about that.
There's almost a bit of a standoff at the moment, isn't there, with a bit of a go
Yeah.
slow race going on, because, like you say, the peloton definitely don't want to catch our breakaway too soon, because that's going to open things up for kind of another breakaway to form and things all kick off. Whereas right now things are all under control from the peloton's point of view. From Uno X's point of view, DSM have got fast finishers within the team like Alberto Dalnese, Matt Dinham. They're happy with this situation, so they don't want to bring this gap down anymore. But as we just saw before we came live on Eurosport, there was discussions in the breakaway between Ben Perry and the two Groupama riders was to actually slow down. Why are you pushing on into this headwind? We know the peloton don't want to catch us, so let's try and conserve as much energy as possible and force the peloton to actually slow down behind us, which means they can maybe go a little bit deeper into this race and really maybe get to kind of 40-50k to go and then really ramp it up, because it's going to be hard to bring down a decent sized gap on that finishing circuit. A couple of climbs, quite a few corners, a little bit tricky in places. So yeah, right now both sets of riders almost trying to go as slow as possible without catching the other or being caught.
Interesting, yeah. I haven't mentioned that for our Eurosport viewers who are joining us. They start to pick up the Altieva River heading into Alta, the most northerly city in the world that has a population in excess of 10,000. In fact, their population in Alta is well in excess of that. But it's effectively the most northerly city in the world of its size. Once they get in there, they have these two 15k laps, which have kind of two hills on them. The hill that rises to the finish, and then the Boskop Summit. The Boskop Summit is our only classified climb of the day. I was having a bit of a giggle with Ian off air about this, because it's wonderful. There's not many other races in the world where a climb can have two different classifications in one day. It's the first two times across it is the standard categorization of King of the Mountains, and the final time across it becomes an all-category climb. So it's not had a couple of rocks added to the top of it. It is just greater importance and more points the third time across it. It's 1,700 metres in length, the classified part, and an average gradient of 4.1%. I haven't seen how steep it gets, but it will be certainly a little bit more attritional towards the end. Talking of attritional things, just getting back to our conversation, Ian, about the world champs and that Glasgow circuit for the road races, for both the men and the women, the attritional nature of it. The thing I think I enjoyed most about it, that is in direct contrast, I'm not just waffling on about the world champs and forgetting the Arctic Race of Norway, but we're now aware that pretty much all of these riders here, most of them, if not all of them, will have a radio earpiece in. They're back to having a radio in their back pocket. The riders who are racing at those world championships, of course, didn't. And I always find that fascinating, watching those races, the under-23s, the men's, the women's elite and the women's under-23s from gun to tape. Just watching the difference in the dynamics of the bunch when they definitely have not got a race radio in. You can see that there's as much looking sideways and backwards as there is forward, as the communication is much deeper between the riders. And I found myself watching that, coming away from Glasgow and coming back to this, as we watch Guillaume Martin here. He hasn't got a race radio on that side. I mean, maybe he hasn't got one in at all. But, yeah, there's something I kind of miss about not having race radios in the races and the riders having to talk to each other and pass up information, looking out for the whiteboard at the side of on the motorbike as well. I don't know what your thoughts are, Ian, but I think there's still space for it. You know, I like it. And there we go. We'll pick up Ian's thoughts on that in just a moment, while we just watch the back end to see who's drifting around filling their pockets.
Going back to your radio point, I think...
Go on.
It makes an interesting one. For me, I come from kind of a rider's point of view, and I think from a safety aspect, it can be really useful to get updates. But contrary to that, if all the DSs are saying to every single rider in the peloton, there's a narrowing coming up, get to the front, get to the front.
Yeah.
More often than not, it can make the situation more dangerous, because the riders race all out for this narrowing. Often there's a crash in the race to the narrowing. They get to the narrowing and everything's A-OK, and then they continue on. So there is talk of the safety point of view. There is talk of kind of, when you've got a problem, it's kind of a safety aspect. I saw a couple of times at the World Championships where people had punctured and pulled over next to the road, and cars almost feeling like I didn't feel like they were completely aware of the situation and having to pull over really aggressively, slamming on the brakes, etc. And so there is that safety element to it. Other than that, tactics. To be honest, I think this was one of the World Championships where race radios probably wouldn't have made too much difference, because they were just racing full gas all the way around that finishing circuit. And if you weren't in the top 6-7 riders, then you were on the back foot. And to be honest, I know the one thing DSs would have been saying to everyone is move up. So if I'd been a rider, I'd have ripped my radio out after a lap, because I didn't want to hear the fact that I was being told to move up. I was trying to move up. So I think a worlds like that didn't really need race radios to a certain extent, but there are certain courses where race radios can really make a difference and can, kind of take the real art of team tactics and racing out of it for me. So I know an awful lot of people watching would love race radios banned. So I think I'm firmly sat on the fence right now, because I can't make up my mind whether it would make racing more dangerous or actually it would be fine.
Yeah, it certainly gave us a little bit more to talk about, I think, as commentators at those World Championships, because you could see the riders talking more amongst each other and having a bit of debate, where that isn't happening as much in this peloton, where the riders are linked up. Anyway, we've just looked at Guillaume Martin, the Frenchman, leader for the Cofidis team, dropping back, I think, and taking off by the looks of it. His face buff, neck buff, gilet, and all sorts of other things. He is actually one of those riders who's quite often wearing a lot in races. He's come back with his Cofidis team there. They're the boys in red with the white sleeves, the French world team there. And increasingly yellow and orange, yellow and red. What is it Carlton Kirby calls them? The Ronald McDonald team. I think that's it. No, lipstick and rhubarb. Rhubarb and lipstick, I think it is. Someone else calls it Ronald McDonald. But yeah, it is those colours, isn't it? So easily recognisable, Uno X, and continuing their charge, of course, already having ridden their first Tour de France this summer, breaking in poor old Tobias Johannesson, who I think there's been so much expectation on him, having won the Tour de l'Avenir in such fine form. He and his brother absolutely dominated the Tour de l'Avenir a few years ago. That is the Tour de France for under 23s, up and coming riders. The Tour of the future basically translates into that. And he's had a steady progression since then. He was 51st in that road race at the Worlds. He rode the Tour de France as well, where I think he finished somewhere inside the top 30, something like that. I bet, Ian, you'll know that stat. You probably got that right off. But Johannesson is still continuing to develop in a quite healthy way. It doesn't sound like he's had too much pressure on him, but he's probably the leader of that Uno X team this week. And in his biggest national tour, we do have the Tour of Denmark as well, but this one's longer. And arguably slightly more prestigious, and certainly gets a higher profile, the Arctic Race of Norway. I think Johannesson's got to be up there amongst the favourites this week.
Yeah, I checked a betting website, and he was the bookies' favourite. So, you're right, being noted down as one of the favourites. And I think the majority of that comes from what he's done in the past. And like you said, I think he was exactly 30th at the Tour de France this year, but the way he won l'Avenir a few years ago was super impressive. Looking at Uno X as well, they have made some very shrewd, very strong signings looking ahead to next year. It is crazy transfer season at the moment within the cycling peloton, and riders going here, there and everywhere, but they've made some really solid signings, so they're getting stronger year on year, and being able to do the races like the Tour de France are going to entice riders to that team. Yeah, absolutely. It seems that the transfer market the last few weeks seems to have gone crazy, Ian, as well. I mentioned that news that I hadn't seen until yesterday, actually, that the man who isn't here, last year's winner, Andreas Leknesson, is going to Uno X next year. Uno X making lots of signings and really bolstering things as well, continuing their year-on-year progression, that team as well. But sticking, as far as I've noticed, certainly seeming to still stick to their entirely Danish and Norwegian team makeup, which I think is interesting. Uno X is a Danish and Norwegian automated petrol
fuel station, road fuel station, I suppose you say, at the side of the road. But it's only based in Norway and Denmark, and they've set themselves out to be, and intend to continue being, I believe, an entirely Danish and Norwegian team in terms of the riders. And that does mean it's no surprise we've seen Alexander Kristoff going there to presumably end his career at that team. But also we see riders like Andreas Leknesund, who are on a very good, high-profile team at DSM Firmenich, deciding that actually the jump to Uno X is a good one at this time.
Precisely, and I think DSM's one of those strange teams. There's been rumours in the past of it not being great for one reason or another. A lot of riders kind of breaking free of contracts within their contracts and moving on, but some riders thriving as well in that kind of environment. So interesting to see how some riders obviously fit in with their philosophies and some riders just not, which I think goes for all the teams. I think a survey done the other day, and the riders returned, I think it was 55% of the World Tour riders thought that their teams weren't doing enough for them. So, I'm sure they were anonymous questionnaires, but it just goes to show that perhaps everything isn't always as great at these big World Tour teams as perhaps the younger riders or even as fans looking in often think.
Of course, just to tag on to that, Ian, one of the things that you and I know only too well is just how hotly contested any of the professional berths are on any of these teams. That's why I'm always so careful when I describe the different tiers of cycling, and I'm talking about the UCI Continental teams like Team Coop at the back here for Johan Ravnøy, the rider in dark blue. Me describing it as only a UCI Continental team, a third division team. There are hundreds of riders, if not thousands of riders worldwide, who would give their right arm literally to be in that team, aren't there? Let alone DSM Firmenich or Israel Premier Tech, Lidl Trek, our big teams. The competition to get in is so tough, and dare I say it, that can also be why in some teams as well, there can be, and we know this throughout the history of our sport, a culture of the riders being treated, possibly not always treated as well as they could be, because if they don't like it, they can leave, and there's probably 200 riders as good as them, if not more hundreds of riders, if the lower down you go, who are as good as them, who would probably jump in the team and say, actually, look, don't even pay me for the first year, I'm just desperate for a professional berth, and then think about paying me. You know, it's so difficult.
It is a very difficult situation as we see the breakaway now going through the feed zone, topping up with bars, gels, bottles, etc. Team Coop rider there at the back picking up his little musette full of goodies, probably a little can of Coke in there or something sugary to finish off the last 80 kilometres of racing.
You don't think it's cold enough, Ian, to have anything warm being handed up yet, do you? I know it's not quite that cold, is it? But do you reckon there'll be any changes in like, I don't know, drink composition, food they're having in there? Less need for electrolytes, maybe?
Perhaps. The only thing to take into account is where the riders are perhaps wearing some more layers than usual, is you can actually create a bit of a kind of microclimate under your jerseys and end up sweating quite a lot. The sweat rates can be quite high even in winter, and it's why in winter when you're training with all those layers on, you need to keep up the drinking. It can be really easy to actually dehydrate in winter, weirdly enough, because we've all done it. We've been for a long ride in the winter months and got back, and you take off your undervest and it's literally soaking with sweat. So super important to stay on top of things, even though these riders aren't rolling along thinking, oh, I'm sweating, I need to drink, etc. So plenty to think about even in these colder conditions, and perhaps taking on a few more carbs, even though, I mean, the number of carbs riders are taking on within stages now are astronomical compared to what we used to think about. Probably looking up around 90 to 120 grams of carbohydrates per hour of racing at a stage race like this.
Welcome back, those of you who've been away on a break. A bit of carnage through the feed zone there, mostly because it's not on much of a rise. We're on a plateau up here, right on the edge of this enormous lake off to the rider's left as well, that they're joining now. And About 40 kilometres away from joining our finishing circuit, on the edge of the sea, effectively. It's an inlet which fills into the Altieva River, which flows southward. We're continuing to head northward on the E45. With 40 kilometres to go, we will enter our 15k finishing circuit, of which there will be 2 laps. We have a breakaway who are still hanging on to a minute and a quarter, minute and 20, something like that. And they are 6 riders. They are Norway's Torbjørn Ruud, Ben Perry of Canada. We have 3 Norwegians in there, by the way. The other 2 are Johan Ravnøy of Team Coop, the Danish team. There he is, third from the front. Fergus Browning is the Trinity rider in the middle in that eye-popping, dazzling Trinity kit for this year. And then there's the 2 Groupama FDG Continental riders, Trym Brensæter and Lewis Bauer, who has won the only intermediate sprint point of the day so far, picking up 3 seconds. By the way, just to confirm who got the 2 and 1 seconds there, it was Johan Ravnøy of Team Coop and Fergus Browning, the Kiwi in the Trinity kit, who got the 1 point and 1 bonus second. So each of those bonification points, don't forget, 3, 2 and 1 bonus points and 3, 2 and 1 bonus seconds. Glad to see all the riders chucking their musette bags back towards the team carers, because this, like all of our professional races now, is a race which takes any kind of littering extraordinarily seriously, particularly the Arctic Race of Norway, where we're running these very long straight line stages. It's almost impossible for them to be picking everything up, so the litter drop zone is absolutely critical. And it's just normal, I guess, for the young riders coming into the sport now, Ian, it's completely normal that they take a feed, put a wrapper in their pocket until they can either go back to the team car or until they go to the litter zone and drop it in the litter zone. To some of these young riders coming through now, the 18, 19, 20-year-olds, they won't have known it any different. But, you know, you and I have been in races in the past where there's riders dropping litter all over the place, just anywhere. And not just professional races either, amateur events too, where you see that happening. And I'm glad to say, I think we're now in an era where that is either extraordinarily frowned upon or cracked down on in the professional side of the sport, and rightly so.
Yeah, exactly. I remember, races that I did, and wasn't uncommon just to take a gel and just lob the packet straight away. And to think of doing that now would just be, ridiculous. And it's just great to see that mindsets surrounding that kind of thing within bike racing is changing. And you see now riders putting packets back into pockets, etc., taking it back to the team car to put it in the team car. And you just need to make that mindset change, and then that becomes the norm, which I'm very glad to say it is now, and it is cracked down on. I don't particularly like, there's a few riders kind of put the packets underneath the seat rails on their saddles, and quite often it'll fall out, and it's like, oh well, I tried to put it away. Well, just put it back in your pocket, because you're going to wash the jersey at the end of the day anyway, so if there's some gel in the pockets, it's going to come out, it's going to be fine.
You are absolutely right to pick that out, because I've seen that a few times, and it's very naughty, because it's plainly obvious it's not going to stay there, is it? And then they're basically saying, oh well, it just happened to drop off the back of the bike. Yes, well done for calling that out, because that is not great. Definitely not great. The average speed has dropped a little bit. It was knocking over about 44, 45 kph, but it is now down a bit on that. Just above 40 kilometres per hour, the average speed at the moment, for these 6 riders who are, well, they're still hanging on to that kind of minute and a quarter, which tells us, watching, as Ian mentioned earlier, that there's a little bit of calming in that chase. Don't want to catch them too soon and suddenly everything fall apart. I suspect, Ian, I don't know what you think, but I reckon they'll probably make it onto the finishing circuit, and then we might see a bit of a change. What do you reckon? 40k
I would have
from
thought
there?
so. I would perhaps think that the peloton would like to catch them fairly early once we hit those finishing circuits, just to make sure that everything's back under control and they can properly race those last 2 circuits. But we do kind of join just after the finish, so it is down as 2 laps, but they kind of do 2 3/4. So we take in our categorised climb 3 times, the Boskop climb with 40.2 kilometres to go, 25.2 kilometres to go, and then that final time just with 10.1 kilometres to go. And once they descend off that, it's not long before they kick back up towards the finish again. So it should be a super exciting last 40 kilometres of this race.
The fjord, the enormous lake off to their left, is here we go. I'm going to do my best with this, Ian. It will be wrong, but I'm still going to do my best. Thank you. Here we go. I ready myself. Trangdalstagen. And that's the only time I'm going to say that. It's a biggie. It's not quite as big as the Kantokionelva, which we were following early on. And it narrows. It continues to narrow and narrow into the valley, to the point where it basically just kind of trickles and peters out to the left of the riders as we watch them. Interesting, we haven't really mentioned the Norwegian national team yet, that they're led, I suspect led, I don't know what you think, by Odd Christian Aking here, former leader of the Vuelta for a long time, of course, rides for EF Education Easy Post on the road, but he getting his slot in the Norwegian national team for this race. I don't know what your thoughts are, Ian, also on that happening. He already rides for a world team, but he is riding for his national team in his national race as well. I think it sounds all right. Do you think there's anything wrong with it?
I think it's really nice. It's a great thing to do. He obviously wants to do his home race. Obviously, there is the Tour of Norway as well. So a couple of big races within the same country. But he obviously wants to come home, wants to race in this, and to be able to step in for the national squad. He's surrounded by an awful lot of youngsters, and it's a great opportunity to perhaps pass on some information to those young Norwegians that's going to be around him for this week of racing, and he gets an opportunity to race at home and perhaps go one better than his GC here in 2021 where he was second.
Yeah, of course, he was a stage winner as well. I think it was the same year, 2019. Odd Christian Eiking, stage winner here. So maybe emboldened by riding in his national kit in this race, particularly for riders who weren't selected for Worlds. It'd be a really nice opportunity for them to be racing for their national team in their national stage race as well. Ian mentioned the other Norwegian national tour, the 3-day Tour of Norway, which happened in May this year, won by British rider Ben Tullett of Ineos. Had a brilliant ride there, Tullett, again showing his versatility. Another former cyclocross superstar who has drifted a little bit away from cross, hasn't he, since his time in Team Ineos. It'd be nice to see him come back to the muddy fields, no doubt, but he was the winner of that 3-stage race earlier this year in May.
Just
previous winners, by the way, at our finish. Sorry, Ian, go on.
Just announced this morning that he's off to Jumbo-Visma.
Oh, now I hadn't seen that. This is transfer season right now, so there's some news hot off the press. That is fascinating news about Ben Tullett, actually. I always find it fascinating when the very biggest of the stage race teams swap riders. You know, it is interesting, isn't it? Because they're going to be. I suspect he'll be doing a similar kind of job at Jumbo-Visma as well. But then there's been this transfer of both knowledge, advancement, and status, I guess, in world stage racing between Ineos and Jumbo-Visma over the last few years, and Ineos Grenadiers themselves as a team have evolved and changed into a much more kind of versatile and adaptive team, not always entirely focused on winning 3-week stage races as we've seen this year. But that'll be an interesting move. I wonder whether he'll be given more freedom there. And dare I say it, I still can't see him riding any more cross at the moment. It should be a real shame for such a talent, you know.
No, he stated he wants to continue to develop as a GC stage racer, and he joins quite a long list of riders who are leaving Team Ineos this winter, which is interesting. Is it Danny Martinez, Sivakov? Who else has left there? A number of... Teo Gegenhardt has left as well. So kind of a bit of a mass exodus from Team Ineos. Read into that what you want, but I'd be surprised if Ben Tullett would be given huge opportunities at Jumbo-Visma. I mean, the talent that they're signing up and they've already got within their squad. Yeah. But we'll see where it takes him. Certainly won't be back to the crossfield, unfortunately.
No. I'm going to bring up my little tracker of transfers, actually, because it's interesting gossip at this time of year as well, while we're watching the Arctic Race of Norway. We'll come back to that, because it is fascinating to think about why these moves might happen. I mean, unless the riders explicitly say themselves, it's always a little bit tricky to know. There we go. It's also interesting to see different of our world's biggest teams as well, evolving and changing the way they do things. I'm just looking down my feed and seeing about Mikel Landa moving from Bahrain Victorious to join Soudal Quickstep to bolster their Grand Tour ambitions and build a team around Remco Evenepoel as long as he stays there. But it's amazing, isn't it, talking about a team like that, which historically has always, that Quickstep team through its various guys, has always been a classics-focused team. And now, really down to one rider, it's suddenly becoming, or aiming to become, this 3-week stage race hunting, mega team. That's the way they'd like it to be, I think.
Certainly
fascinating.
Very strange to see almost from the outside that they're putting all of their eggs in one basket, the Evenepoel basket. I mean, you can see why they're doing it, whether Landa's enough to keep him at that team and kind of be able to help him enough at these 3-week races to really make the difference. But yeah, only time will tell on that front.
Back to the back end of our peloton, some of the riders still completely wrapped up in arm warmers and leg warmers too, as we look up this beautiful meandering waterfall. Welcome back, those of you who've been away on a short break. We are eating into the 40k that take us to this finishing circuit and taking an opportunity to look into some of the rock faces off to the riders right as they make their way alongside the long sausage-like fjord off to their left-hand side. And our 6 riders in the breakaway. Slightly longer turns being done by the Groupama FDG riders, as you'd expect, with 2 riders in there as well. They want to try and get as deep and as far into those 2 finishing circuits as possible. Fergus Browning there for Trinity Racing. He's come to this race from the Tour d'Alsace, and he's had a very stage racy year as well. He was one of the riders that was in that Tour de Taiwan that I mentioned earlier in the year, actually. This is his 4th or 5th 1-week stage race this year for Browning. It looks like we're getting a lovely drone shot up the canyon that flows southward away from Alta. Beautiful. These rivers and fields, by the way, home to some of the best salmon in the world, of course. In fact, the Tana River, which borders the far north of Norway where we are now, borders Finland, is home to the biggest catch of salmon in any river in Europe. And it also had in it the record Atlantic salmon, 79 pounds, 36 kilograms, an absolute beast of a creature. And I believe it was released back into the river as well when it was caught as well, weighed, photographed and released, thankfully, as well. So continuing on its long journey, I suspect, that Atlantic salmon, a creature of that size, weight and age, will be quite a rarity. We'll keep our eyes peeled, by the way, for wildlife across the course of the week as we watch our breakaway just regrouping. I think 1 or 2 riders just dropping off back to the team car as well. Ben Perry there in the human-powered health kit. Hey, talking of teams, Ian, news I heard this week that human-powered health is going to be ending at the end of this year. Now, that is a great shame, not least for the men's team, but for their women's team too. And I'm thinking about the likes of Audrey Cordon-Ragot, of course, who rides for their women's team, who's only just managed to join that team this year when last year's team disbanded for her, where she was going to be leading that, I think it was the B&B Hotels women's team, if I'm not mistaken. And never good to see a team folding, but not least when they seem to be on such a positive vibe these last few years.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be scrabbling for info now, but I thought I read somewhere that the women's team were okay. They'd been
Ah,
bought by
right.
someone else, perhaps, but definitely the
Okay.
men's team will be no more at the end of this year, which,
Yeah.
yeah, is a real shame. It's been kind of a stalwart of American cycling for a number
Yeah.
of years and always travelling to Europe and, yeah, doing particularly well. I remember a Tour of Britain stage the other year with one of their riders doing really well. And
Yep.
yeah, it's just a real shame, and it's got some good up and coming talent on there. Tour Leverne the other day, Gage Hecht coming from a cross point of view, he's on that team, and an English point of view, Paul Double on there as well. One of a real strong climbing talent who could do well this week, and I'm sure all of those riders on that team this week are going to use this as a potential opportunity to put themselves on that transfer market that's so busy at the moment. I mean, Sebastian Schonberger, another rider from Glasgow who did a huge ride. So already those riders, I'm sure, desperate to try and get up that kind of GC listing, the result sheets on given stages to try and up their value on that transfer market, because all of these riders out without contract, and like you were saying earlier in commentary, probably 50 to 100 riders going for every single pro contract going. So
Yep. Yep.
such a fiercely fought situation. So
Yep.
very difficult for some of those riders.
That's interesting what you say, Ian, about the up the value. In a way, unfortunately, what they've got to kind of do is, hang on, how do I say this? Yeah, up their value but decrease their cost. Do you see what I mean? That's just the way it is. Particularly if they're, I mean, the lucky riders in there, and the riders who are particularly, and who maybe have a good agent and have had a really good year and a strong palmares and are young enough, might make their way from human-powered health into a world team. But otherwise, they'll be looking for a sideways move, or some of those riders moving down to a continental team as well. And that's if things go well for them, because the rungs of the ladder in professional cycling are not many. They're not many. It's a few rungs, isn't it? And dropping down to that UCI continental level from the pro level means possibly no longer having an actual team bus, but instead having team vehicles. And suddenly the support becomes a bit thinner on the ground, and training camps are not in quite nice hotels and all the rest of it, and there's a definite difference in there. But we wish them well, those men, and we hope that what we believe is happening with the women's team is true as well, because they've also been really prominent in the very biggest women's races this year as well. All the while, there are some continental teams who've been around quite a long while and seem to be surviving, like Team Coop here as well, this Danish team. Coop Repsol, as they are. They've added a new sponsor, I think just this year. They were Team Coop last year. Now they are Coop Repsol in the dark blue with the black shorts. And it's Johan Ravnoy who is representing them in that breakaway. Only one national champion in this race, and we're looking at him right now. Riding for Uno X, that's Frédéric Devernez. He's had a good year this year as well, winning 2 or 3 of the big French races as well, at least a couple of them in the Coupe de France this year. He had a nice consistent patch between May and June, Devernez. Got a good fast finish on him as well. And he is easily recognisable as that Norwegian national road race champion. So expect to see him active and looking to be involved in this race, I'm certain, this week. Slightly surprising, actually, and only one national champion in here. Normally, of a field of this size, we'd have at least a few. But as I say, there is so much on this week and so much to stay on top of before we even think about the Vuelta, which starts at the end of next week. How's that happened?
It's mad, isn't it? How much racing is on at the moment. And yeah, I was just looking at the calendar the other day, and literally a few weeks away from September starting, and I just really don't know where this summer of racing has gone. It'll soon be cyclocross season.
Yep. Absolutely. So the gap has gone out a little bit more again. They've gained about another 10 seconds, our 6 riders in the break. And they are, if you've only just recently joined us, 3 Norwegians. Torbjørn Ruud of the Norwegian national team. Benjamin Perry, the Canadian. The other 2 Norwegians I'll bring you first of all. Johan Ravnoy of the Team Coop. Danish team, and Trim Brensutter of Groupama FDG. Now, Brensutter has Lewis Bauer with him, the Kiwi teammate of his, in the dark blue and blacky colours, or well, not light blue and dark blue, I guess it is, a Groupama FDG Continental, their under-23 team. Lewis Bauer winning that only bonification point so far in Massey. There he is. He's the slightly shorter of the two Groupama FDG Continental riders there in the middle. It is Brensutter who is in front of him, just sorting out his outer layers. Sitting at the right back there, at the very back there, is Torbjorn Ruud of Norway. Ben Perry just in front of him. And Fergus Browning, I think it is, who's on the front right now with the white helmet in the colours of Trinity Racing, who we've not really mentioned too much so far, Ian, but there we are talking about difficulties for certain teams. That is a relatively small budget UCI Continental team that seems to be so good at picking up top talent and then progressing it as well. I know that's their remit to a certain extent, but look at the team they've got here this week. Two Aussies, Liam Johnston and Fergus Browning, who's in the breakaway now. Camilo Gomez of Colombia, who is one of the real hot prospects of Colombian climbing on the European circuit. He's 20 years of age. Then they had the 18-year-old Norwegian, Tobias Nacken, Hugo Rodriguez of Colombia, the 19-year-old, and Will Smith, the 21-year-old Englishman as well. Very multinational, and very proud of kind of how quickly they develop talent as well. Being I think it is an entirely under-23 team as well, Trinity Racing, if I'm not mistaken. It's remarkable how many top riders, of course, have come through that team. Think of Tom Pidcock and others, of course, but it's been a real success story the last few years, and particularly coming from a nation where initially it was mostly British riders, and now British cycling doesn't run an academy system like it used to, where it takes academy type teams away to big races. So they're very reliant on having teams like this that top British talent can feed into. But this is a properly multinational team. It's by no means, it's a British registered team, but it's by no means a British team in terms of its rider makeup, is it? It's really multinational.
It is, and they're doing a brilliant job in getting this talent into these sorts of races and being able to showcase that talent. You said Tom Pidcock, also was it Lamperty has just signed for Soudal Quickstep for next year.
Yep.
Super strong sprinter that is going there as Fabio Jakobsen leaves that team. So good timing for him to get some chances in perhaps some of the smaller races perhaps next year. But also, like you say, they're doing a fantastic job and kind of punching above their weight, as it were. Plenty of talent have come through, and they're just given the opportunity. They just, at that age, at 18, 19, 20 years of age, you just need to be taken to these races. It's not all about big contracts and huge levels of support. You just need to get yourself to these races, train hard, and then, this is your moment. This is where all the big teams will be scanning the results. Plenty of World Tour teams here in the convoy, listening to the race radio. So, just one of these places that you can really make a name for yourself on one of those teams like Trinity Racing.
The riders here in our breakaway are on the descent down through the valley, following the Ibielva River. Off to their right now. They actually keep crossing it. It was off to their left just now, so they really are following the road right the way through the valley. And there is our peloton doing likewise a little bit further up, 1 minute 26 further back up the road. At this point, the river Ibielba off to their left, but they cross over it on a bridge, and again in a minute you can just see at the top of the shot there, actually, the vehicle is just ahead of our breakaway, where they've crossed back over the river again. We have about 15 kilometres now until we join the circuit, and we actually join it by going, first of all, over one side of the finishing hill. We don't go through the finish line as soon as we get in there, but we're running along the edge of the hill that will take us to the finish before we then progress to the Boskop summit for the first time. So it'll be the first time there's any King of the Mountains points available today. 3 of them, one on each of our finishing circuits, one before we get to the finishing circuit, and then one on each of those 2 laps of the finishing circuit, all for that peacock jersey. Yes, if you haven't seen it, that's exactly what it is. It's a white King of the Mountains jersey with, I guess, about 10 or 12 long peacock feathers with one eye on them spread all around the jersey. It is absolutely stunning. It's not actually the easiest jersey to pick out, though, for us as commentators, because it kind of blends in a little bit, being kind of white and mottled. But when you see it up close, as we did almost every day last year on the shoulders of American rider Stephen Bassett, riding for Human Powered Health then, of course, it is, yeah, it's a spectacular jersey, it really is. Of course, our leader's jersey in this race is called the Midnight Sun jersey, because at this time of year in the summer, the sun doesn't really set in the north of Norway at all. It's out all day and all night. So hence why Norwegians are very handy with their blackout blinds and eye masks and things like that. And then, of course, in their winter, it barely rises either. So they get either, I don't know whether it's the best or the worst of both worlds, but that's where it is. Now, what's going on with our breakaway here? We keep finding gaps in amongst them. I'm not sure whether they're constantly all going back to the car, which they might be by the looks of it. Lewis Bauer is on the front. Here he is, the New Zealander, who is leading this race because he took those 3 bonus seconds. Ooh, problem. First time we've seen the Q36.5, boys. This is Alessandro Fideli, their sprinter.
Could be a good day for him. Should suit him. Short, punchy climb, fast finish. So, yeah, probably their kind of rider that they're looking after today, and that probably confirms that one rider stopping with him to help him back on. Certainly wouldn't bother doing that if he wasn't a protected rider within that team for today's stage.
That is the unmistakable mullet of Cyrus Monk, who's dropped back for him, the Aussie on the Q36.5 team. He has got, no doubt about it, the best mullet in pro cycling. He stopped outside my hotel in Glasgow, actually, doing a warm-up lap for the road race, having a little look, and I got a look at that said mullet up front. It is very impressive. It's fully blonde as well, and it just flows like it's wonderful. It's the right composition and length for a really, really good cycling mullet. And he's dropped back to pace Fideli back in. Good pick, Ian, as well, actually, because you're right, Alessandro Fideli is their fast man. By the looks of it, quite a few of the riders dropping back to maybe take off some layers as well. This is Odd Christian Eiking, riding for the Norwegian national team. Let's see if we can pick out who's back here, who's messing around back here with full leg warmers and arm warmers on one of the Little Trek riders. I don't know if you caught him there, Ian. I'm not sure who that was. By the looks of it, some of the team staff stopping to admire the scenery as well.
That's Christofferson from Team Coop. He's their GC guy, I would have thought, for this race. He's 7th for the general classification of Qinghai Lake, which, yeah, maybe not the biggest race on the UCI calendar, but one of those races very difficult to get a win at, or a top 10 within that GC. Fiercely contested. One of his teammates out the back as well, perhaps trying to help him back in or back through that convoy.
Yeah, there's quite a few riders out the back here. Whether it's just the timing of people going back and picking things up. Don't think we've missed anything. It was strange, though, seeing that bike change for Fideli, because I couldn't see, neither of his tyres looked flat unless something was going soft slowly.
I think it's probably that point in the race where it's the last opportunity to really stop, take layers off, have a nature break, pick up some bottles, pick up some food before they kind of continue this descent down and pick up that finishing circuit. Because once we're onto that finishing circuit, you won't really want to be going back to your team car for anything further. So yeah, the last natural opportunity, and once one starts dropping off and going back and stopping, then it gives you a good indication that it's okay. There's going to be a few of us off the back, and we'll find a few wheels to work together to come back. So yeah, kind of once a few people start pulling over to the side of the road, you tend to find a few more stopping at the same time. Safety in numbers.
Yeah. I think we enter the circuit with about 45k to go, so it's about 15k, depending on exactly exactly what you call entering the circuit, but entering the outskirts of it. They won't be long. They know that. That's why the last few bits of energy being picked up, because the circuit is not quite as wide a road as this lovely E45 we've been following through the lush green trees. We're into a sort of heavily forested area as we follow the edge of the valley and the Ibielva River off to their right. It kind of meanders, flattens out a bit, gets shallower and then gets deeper again. And just like that, Romain Combeau is back on the front, the Frenchman for the Dutch DSM Firmenich team. It's interesting, they just keep sending him back to the front as well all the time. Notable, those green jerseys of Equipo Kern Pharma still hovering there. You think, by the sound of it, Ian, you're thinking on this finishing circuit that we're going to have some kind of well, not necessarily a bunch sprint, but a sprinty type finish today, rather than a kind of attritional climby one. Would I be right in saying that?
I would expect a bit of a rouleur to win today, perhaps. Well, looking at Equipo Kern Pharma, Roger Adria, super strong rider, and
yeah.
I haven't seen him picked up by a World Tour team just yet, but I'd be surprised if he wasn't. I mean, 12-foot Flesh Wallon this year, and we did GP Miguel Indurain together where he was 5th and super strong, and he's shown time and time again to be able to step up when the racing steps up. And for me, that's like green flag. Like, sign him up, because he revels in bigger races. So it'd be interesting to see what he can do this week. And I would say I've got him highlighted. Mark him down. They have also got Alieta here, signed for UAE 24 to 26. So they firmly believe in him. Young rider, 13th at the under-23 road race just recently at the World Championships in Glasgow. So they've got a couple of options this week, but I'd have thought perhaps going with the experience of Adria this week.
Absolutely. They are riding out in the direction of the Norwegian Sea, just to get your seas orientated correctly, for those of you who don't know Norway particularly well, off to their west. And Norway itself, by the way, I should be really clear if you're not looking at a map, spreads along the western edge of Scandinavia, if you like. Finland off to its right, and the Norwegian Sea to the west, and the Barents Sea up to the north above them. And we are going to kind of, across the course of these next 4 days, start to work our way away from looking out to the Norwegian Sea along the edge of Norway, and increasingly focused on the Barents Sea to the north and even colder waters. Once we get up there, we should be able to see glaciers and melting ice caps as well up on the North Cape. That's Sunday afternoon, but so much more to happen before then. Last year's 4th and final stage of the Arctic Race of Norway was absolutely brilliant, and it was kind of had a similar ending to this one as well. That was on multiple laps. I think it was about 4 laps, that final stage last year into Trondheim. Yes, it was that circuit, that finishing circuit in Trondheim, and it all kicked off. Andreas Leknesson was very strong on that day, managed to go solo in the end by himself, and won the race and the stage all together, but it got smashed to pieces on that really tough climb they took in every lap of that finishing circuit in Trondheim last year. Different finale this time round, not working our way southward, but working our way northward. And it might well be that we see the general classification decided before then. This is the only stage, let me remind you, today's stage between Kautokeino and Alta, that has a finishing lap, of which we take in twice. Every stage after that is basically point to point, running into a finish line. Every single one, though, finishing uphill, even if it's only ever so slightly. Tomorrow's stage has a kilometre-long, very gradual drag to the finish, although it's probably much more likely a sprinting-type finish tomorrow. Saturday's stage into Havøysund is the hilliest stage, and it has a 2K climb to the finish as well, which steepens in places. That should be a really useful sort out. And then the longest stage is the final stage between Kvalsund and the North Cape itself, or Nordkapp as we should call it. It's the longest stage. It has over 1,800 metres of climbing and 2 big climbs just before the finish. I say big, they're not enormous, are they, Ian? I think the longest climb we've got this week actually is about 4 or 5K, and fairly gradual, but it's where they're put in these races as well, and the prominence they're given as well in terms of bonus seconds, where the bonus seconds are put too.
Yeah, they can be super aggressively raced and make a 4 or 5 kilometre climb feel a lot longer than it actually is. Looking at the climbs today, reasonably steep in terms of average gradient, but reasonably short at the same time. So only 1.4 kilometres the Boskop climb, so carry some good speed into the bottom of that one, and you'll do 200-300 metres without thinking about it. So probably a kilometre climbing, really. So I'd have thought most people, depending how it is raced, I can't see a team really wanting to go all in on this first stage and really try and blow the race to pieces on this finishing circuit. So perhaps a good opportunity for one of the strongmen who can sprint. And we see Fedeli changing bikes once again, so maybe going back onto his number one bike as such. But always have this conversation with riders. In cyclocross, obviously, we have multiple bikes that we can race on. If you're not happy with your number two bike, sort it out, because having to change again just because you perhaps prefer where the levers are or the saddle position of one bike over the other, then what's the point in having a spare bike? So, yeah, a bit of a strange one there, and looks like they might be holding back the cars there. Oh, sorry.
Strange.
That was the breakaway.
Yes. Right, that would explain it. It is odd, though, and actually, in a way, because we're seeing Fedeli doing this as well, maybe it does add a bit more to what you're saying, Ian, about him being a man to watch for the day. Nervousness about bike setup or something. Depends, I guess, how much of a micro-adjuster he is, because for some of these riders, and I must admit, I'm not racing in the Arctic Race of Norway, but I'm a terrible one for, if I have a left-hand or right-hand lever that's just ever so slightly more in than the other one, it drives me cuckoo. I'd be back at that car 10 times until it's sorted. So maybe he's one of them, Fedeli, particularly on a day where he wants to be on his A game. Let's see if we are going to be treated to that kind of sprint finish. Back with the breakaway. Food still going down the throat because we are about 13 kilometres to go from entering our circuit. And some of you are about to leave us for a commercial break. If that's you, we will see you imminently. The timing, the timing to Group 2 back there, Ian, is too accurate for me to think it isn't being very carefully measured, because it is consistently that 119, 120, 121, and of course there's a bit of variation in the way that it's measured, but it's being held so perfectly that on a road like this, I guess it can come down to watts, can't it? The riders on the front who are setting that pace, the likes of Romain Combeau, the Frenchman, the DSM rider, who's been on the front an awful lot, just literally looking down at his power meter, being told every now and again what the gap is, and knowing that if he is holding whatever it is, 325 watts, then he just keeps holding 325 watts, and he knows that'll keep it of a similar kind of time. It's a horrible kind of calculated way of measuring things, though, isn't it? But it can work like that.
Exactly, and I think we've seen this time gap hovering around about 120 for almost the entire time, as we see some of the locals out in force, waving their Norwegian flags.
If you saw, folks at home, the flag off to the right-hand side, by the way, that was the indigenous Sami flag. So these are the Norwegian flags. On the right, just before them, there was a family there waving the Sami flag as well, of the indigenous people of Norway. And this is a region, the further north we go as well, the more increasingly kind of hard-fought the protection of their languages and the Sami cultures that are passed down from generation to generation, and that was their flag. It's kind of, I'll do it a disservice by trying to describe it. It's red with a circle in the middle and a stripe down it too. I'm going to bring up a version of it and describe it to you in better detail over the course of the next few days. Look at that. Stunning. Absolutely stunning. As I say, I say what I've said at the beginning of the broadcast, for any of you that wasn't there. This is the only race I can think of in the world, Ian, I reckon, where we could remove the riders, remove the whole convoy and remove all the fans and just keep the helicopters and the drones going to film it all, and people would still be watching.
I was just waiting for you to go into David Attenborough mode then.
Yeah. No, but it's not unlike, people make a living out of making YouTube videos of folding towels and stuff like that because it's soothing. I think this is the closest you get to just like a helicopter or a drone shot up through one of these beautiful valleys. Just it's like, soothing for the eye. We lost a little bit of sound there just for a moment, and I don't know whether this is Lewis Bauer trying to see if he can defend his general classification or whether he's just feeling the stronger of the two. He's got something out of this already, so now he's turning himself into loyal teammate to Trym Brensæter. I guess only time will tell once they get onto that finishing circuit, which it looks like they will, ahead of the chasing peloton. Welcome back, those of you who've been away on a breakaway. We look skyward, and as we do, we ponder who's going to be winning the first Midnight Sun jersey in this 10th birthday for the Arctic Race of Norway. Still such a young race, but with a really strong following. I've been really, in a way that only has happened once already this year when we were covering Trobro Leon, that I get comments from people saying, this race, I wait for it every year, it's just one of my favourites, and there were so many comments like that from people saying this race in particular, and it's the landscape. It's also the fact that we don't really get a chance to see the far north of Norway and the racing above the Arctic Circle and these beautiful, lush green views. I hope, for everyone's sake, Ian, the weather stays like this, because without the rain it's lovely, but when it rains up here it's so open and exposed that it can turn into a very misty grey landscape as well. This is how we want to be seeing it.
Exactly, with quite strong winds and fairly low temperatures around 11 degrees. Even the lightest of rain would make things feel an awful lot colder. I'm sure riders and spectators don't want that being wrapped up any more so than they already are within this race, and like you say, we want to be able to see those mountains in the background, that landscape. It's absolutely stunning, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I'm not sure we didn't just see a Devon flag there. I'm sure that was a green flag with a white cross on it. I may have been imagining that, having recently returned a few weeks ago from the West Country and Devon in the southwest of England. I may have imagined that. It looked like a green flag with a white cross on it. Might not be the only place that has that as its flag, but anyway. We're looking out, kind of out towards the estuary and the sea here. There's a big kind of hooking inlet around the city of Alta, and it is a city where we are headed to. It'll be quite a different feel, I think, on our finishing circuit to this E45. It's been lovely. I've enjoyed the waterfalls, the fields all around it, but it will be quite nice to get off this road, Ian, won't it? At some point, I'm sure the riders are thinking, 130k up the same road. It's been lovely. Now let's turn off and actually go around a bend. Let's get round a bend. So 9 kilometres to the Boskop summit. And that'll be the first of our King of the Mountains points. 3, 2 and 1 points over the top of that.
I think you mentioned earlier the Groupama rider beginning to drive things. I think he's just trying to get into that finishing circuit now and perhaps set the teammate up for those King of the Mountain points that will come shortly after we hit the circuit for the first time. So he's picked up his sprint points and his bonus seconds, but perhaps now falls to his teammate, perhaps the stronger climber of the two, to pick up those KOM points, because they're going to be fiercely contested, just as the intermediate sprint was.
Ian Field there, and me, Jez Cox, bringing you every stage of this Arctic Race of Norway, and every day actually we're bringing you about 3 hours of coverage. That means you get to see an awful lot of the race, an awful lot of the landscape, but what we didn't see today that would have been interesting, particularly on this first stage, is the battle to get into that breakaway. Because as we look at the composition of those 6 riders, two of them are from the same team anyway. I cannot understand. I can only presume there must have been an absolute battle to be in that first day breakaway, because for a lot of these teams, Ian, as you've just mentioned, to talk about getting the King of the Mountains points, it's the first day's breakaway that serves to have the greatest gain, doesn't it? Because if you get the points, you're going to get a jersey. You get maximum points in any of those competitions, you're going to get the jersey anyway. But also, it then sets you up for the next day and the third day, possibly as well, to get into another breakaway and get some more points. But if you weren't in the break on the first day, it's often a lot harder then to move up the classification in subsequent days in a race which is only 4 days long. So, yeah, I mean, it's a shame we didn't see it in a way. We are bringing the viewers the vast majority of these stages with 3 hours every day, but you would have thought, wouldn't you? It'd be an absolute battle to be in there.
Exactly, and after the first day, very often it can almost be set between kind of 2 or 3 riders gunning for that Sprints jersey or the KOM jersey. So it is important to set your stall out in this first stage and try and pick up as many points along the way, and it'll be interesting to see how long these guys can survive for on that finishing circuit, as we see that gap definitely coming down very slowly now, down to 1 minute and 7 seconds. It was hovering around about the minute 20 for a number of kilometres, but looks like the peloton just increasing the pace ever so slightly. They've probably got word that the breakaway were trying to up things as they head down towards Alta and that finishing circuit, but they're wise to it and not giving them too much room at all.
This is the Norwegian Torbjørn Ruud, who has, by the looks of it, been racing in the States this year. He's not a youngster like some of the other riders on that Norwegian national team. In fact, he is their second oldest rider, but has been racing in the States this year, and with a good level as well. Been up there in the Tour of the Gila, and he was racing in the States all of last season as well. 5th in the Joe Martin stage race. And getting an opportunity to ride all over the world by the looks of it as well. 6th on GC in the Tour of Rhodes. 2nd in the King of the Mountains competition at the Tour of Gila. You'll excuse me, I'm just going through all of his stage results. But in terms of American racing, the Tour of the Gila and the Joe Martin stage race, 2 of their very biggest races, particularly now that we don't have a Tour of California. In fact, probably amongst their very biggest UCI races as well. So good to see a rider having been racing in the States and then coming back and racing for his national team in his national stage race as well. The American scene at the moment, Ian, by all accounts from what I'm hearing, going through, I guess, the same kind of problems that we've been having in the United Kingdom as well, in terms of dwindling big races and, you know, a struggle to keep the biggest races still happening as well. Maybe it's just part of a global economic downturn, but it's not an easy time, is it?
It's not. It seems to be very much crit-based, a little bit like the UK was a couple of years ago. Even the UK now losing their big crit series. So yeah, kind of the same struggles English-speaking countries seem to be having with pro cycling. The gravel scene and mountain biking even seems to be doing well in the US. So whether it's just a turn in kind of fortune, tend to find that the different disciplines kind of ebb and flow ever so slightly, depending on normally kind of what professionals they have at the time. And I know at the moment the Americans don't have that kind of that big name within like the kind of GC. They got Kuss, who always at the service of others, it seems, and obviously a huge name in cycling, but not that big winner, although plenty of people backing GC Kuss for the future.
Yeah, there's a lot of love for Sepp Kuss, isn't there? I think he seems to come across as a very likeable guy. He's obviously a real talent. He looks great on the bike as well. He always looks like he's kind of half smiling while he's climbing as well. I think that helps. We are watching Tobias Johannesson there, sitting third wheel, just resetting his bike head unit, his computer there, doing something with it, fiddling around with some watts measurement, no doubt. Now we see some new colours coming up, increasingly more of that Norwegian national team in the middle. And then off to the left as well, the very easily recognisable yellow, white and blue of Team Flanders Baloise, the Belgian team. They've got, in terms of sprinty talent, if we're thinking about today and tomorrow as being the most likely sprint-type finishes as well, they have Milan Fretin, who's had a good year already this year, the 22-year-old. Seems to have been around forever, actually, as an emerging sprint talent, but still only 22 years of age. He's another name to keep an eye on, isn't he, today?
Definitely. When I'm doing my research, I always kind of think of an age before I click on the rider and find out more info, and he's definitely one of them. I definitely thought he was older than 22, but super fast finisher and already had some good results this year.
Simon Geschke here, just removing another layer. The 37-year-old German veteran, who everyone will always remember as the man who came so close to winning the King of the Mountains. Of course, he's a former Tour de France stage winner, but last year came so close to winning that King of the Mountains jersey. It was almost apologetically won by Jonas Vingegaard in the end. Right the way down to the wire, wasn't it? Seeing him sitting on the floor in tears, having put so much effort into that. And of course, in doing so, almost by not winning the jersey, endearing themselves in the hearts of the cycling fans, kind of even more so as well. We love to see a rider who gives it everything. And throughout his career, Simon Geschke is definitely one of them, the German in the French team of Cofidis, who seems to have really found his place in that team as well.
He has, and it was disappointing to see him have to abandon the Tour this year through illness, and he's retiring at the end of the year, so that was his final Tour de France. But interesting, I'm sure he's going to want to try and get some results towards the end of this year and finish on a high, or at least help his teammates get some good results along the way before he ends what's been an absolutely amazing career. Always one to watch, an exciting attacking rider, good uphill, fast finish on him as well. And a few years ago, this is the sort of race that would have suited him down to the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. We are very close now to ramping up the Boscott Summit for the first time. We should be seeing a little bit more of the edge of the estuary itself before we get to that point, though, because we turn right as we enter the circuit. It's a clockwise loop, of which we'll do 2. Once we get to the finish line, that is. So we go over the Boscott Summit first, complete that lap, go through the finish line, and these riders will be seeing 2 laps to go. The riders in the breakaway. Torbjørn Ruud of Norway coming down the outside on the red bike, the long-limbed Norwegian. And he is in the company of 2 Norwegian riders, Johan Ravnoy of Team Coop and Trym Brensæter of the Groupama FDG Continental team, the under-23 team. Lewis Bauer is there with him, his teammate too, the New Zealander, along with Fergus Browning of Australia, and Ben Perry, the Canadian, who keeps smiling at the camera. I think Ben Perry's enjoying his time out there today, despite that pressure that Ian and I have been talking about, of the fact that we believe his team is set to fold at the end of this year, unless a new sponsor or a new partner can be found, and it'd be really nice if it did. He is a Canadian on an American team, which have been so active in a way. They've their emergence and their development has kind of mirrored Uno X in the way that they've had a women's team added as well, but also in the way they've raced. Always keen to get people up the road, always keen to be seen doing things as well. Human Powered Health, which almost makes it almost more gutting to hear that they might not be around for too much longer. So fingers crossed something can happen there. They've had a headwind all day. Watching these shots, I think they might just be getting a little bit more of a gusting breeze. We'll watch the flags at the side of the road to get an indication of that maybe as well. But it should be coming from their left still, cross headwind at this stage. So here we are, just about to enter the finishing circuits, riders splitting either side of there, and that is the first time we've turned off the E45 in this year's 10th edition of the Arctic Race of Norway. They set off at 2 o'clock this afternoon local time from Kautokeino, riding towards Alta, and they are now into our finishing circuit. In the sunshine, in the glorious autumn sunshine, or August sunshine, I should say, of the far, far north of Norway. We are up in Troms og Finnmark, or the Finnmark county, right up in the far, far north, going completely the opposite direction to the way we did 1 year ago, where we were going southward. We're well north of the Arctic Circle, and we have 6 riders out front who are now clinging on to 45 seconds. As we thought it might, it's come down now as we've entered this circuit, and they are they're the fodder out there ready to be eaten up. The cycling textbook says they will get eaten up, and there'll be some kind of either sorting out the front end of this lot, or we'll be treated to some fantastic sprint finish on the final slope into Alta, but that remains to be seen. Let's see how long they can hang on to this, I guess. Have you noticed anyone sitting in and holding back a little bit, Ian, just watching them down there?
Just the Trinity rider just skipping a few turns here and there as we've entered this circuit, because they are rapidly approaching the Boskop climb now. They summit that with 40.2 kilometres to go, so what's that, 41.6 kilometres to go. They should hit the foot of it, so around 300 metres time. So yeah, KOM points up for offer in just over 1.5 kilometres to time. So yeah, keep an eye out for all of these riders. We're going to see who's got the best climbing legs after a hard day as we hit the bottom of this climb.
Leader on the road right now, the shorter of the two riders for Groupama FDG, who, hello, that was a nice move there as well from Torbjorn Ruud, who just saw the Shimano neutral service car come under him, did a little bit of a lift. Trouble is, it stirred up Johan Ravnoy as well, of Team Coop here. And I think we're thinking about this KOM already. They do not want to be caught, do they? 38 seconds. They might not be quite aware of how close it is, but they're going for this already. I reckon the person who really wants this most is all of them. It certainly looks that way, doesn't it? They're well up for this. They definitely don't want to get dropped from the break at this stage either. That's a bit early, though, I think, isn't it? A bit early?
Is a little bit, but they haven't ridden into a headwind for all that time to be caught by the peloton, who are rapidly closing in. I'm sure they've been told that that gap is desperately dropping. I mean, they got an indication that it was well under a minute through the Shimano neutral service being pulled out from the gap. And yeah, the last thing you want to do is ride into a headwind for that amount of distance and then not pick up any of the points as your reward for the day.
Looking at this shot now, you could be mistaken for thinking they're riding along the edge of the sort of the Riviera or somewhere, on the edge of Portugal. Trouble is, the air temperature is about 12 degrees. It looks lovely and sunny, but some of these I think some of this lot have still got full-fingered gloves on. I certainly think Fergus Browning, the Aussie in the middle there, has as well. And we've still got riders in the peloton in full sleeves and leg warmers, over shoes, and over socks anyway, and everything as well. So our race leader on the road, Fergus Browning, still hasn't taken off his outer layer. That is actually a sort of a rain outer layer, isn't it, that both of the Groupama FDG riders have got on to keep themselves warm, because that's not their racing jersey or skin suit. That is underneath. I guess that's one of the things nowadays, isn't it, Ian, with what most of the riders are racing in skin suits anyway. So a skin suit surely it offers you less warmth than an actual jersey would, doesn't it? A jersey and bib shorts.
It certainly does, which is why we see them wearing those showerproof, windproof normally quite nicely lined long sleeves, as we see now. Sprint opening up for the KOM.
Yeah, Browning's gone first. It looks like this time it's Brinsetta who is following him. I think it's Brinsetta. It looks like it. The taller figure of the Groupama riders. He's coming up too as well. Trym Brinsetta, the Norwegian, is looking like he's going to get this. I can't see the line, though. There we go. Pretty certain that was Trym Brinsetta. So the Groupama FDG riders, as you said you thought they might, looking to share things between them as well. And press on with this a little bit.
Certainly does. He's taken a little advantage, those two sprinting for the line.
It was Bauer. My apologies, I've done it again. It was Lewis Bauer, I think, who's with him as well. So Bauer definitely feeling the pressure of those two Groupama riders. One of the Bingo Wallonie Bruxelles riders here has escaped from the peloton, is looking to try and ride across. This could be a clever move.
Waited for that gap just to come down, and he's made an acceleration from that peloton behind to jump across to that group. Can't see it really going anywhere right now, but perhaps just trying to anticipate any moves from behind. We always talk about this within cycling. If you're not one of the big favourites who can launch these big attacks on these short, steep climbs, if you can get ahead before the climb and then wait for those stronger riders to come up to you and you crest with them, then you're in a brilliant situation. Rather than trying to conserve and follow and not being able to follow on the climb and being distanced, try and get ahead and allow the stronger riders then on the climb to come up to you. And so perhaps a good move looking forward to the rest of this stage from the Bingo rider.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Split in our 6 riders at the front, led by Fergus Browning, the Australian here, who kicked things off for Trinity Racing. Dare I say it, using the motorbike a little bit at this point, and it was the youngest man in the race, 18-year-old Lewis Bauer of Groupama FDG Continental, who took those 3 King of the Mountains points there. Johan Ravnoy has tagged onto the back here, so I didn't see it, Ian, but I'm presuming Ravnoy picked up the 1 point there on account of where he is on the road right now. He must have been chasing. That That was a fine attack by Fergus Browning, though, but a little bit too early. Once again, no number on the back of our bingo Wallonie-Bruxelles rider here as well. These riders fully layered up in this race. Alexis Guérin it is, we're told, the Frenchman. Now, according to this, the gap has gone out a little bit through that KOM as well to over a minute again, back to this lot from our breakaway of 6. At this stage in the race, we might take that with a little pinch of salt, because that seems interesting. Maybe all that attacking is what's done it, and that's to the very front of the race, our first 3. These 3 here might make sense, because they've really pressed on to stay clear. It's a very impressive ride by Lewis Bauer here. It's not always the way that you get the youngest rider in the race at continental level who's on the attack on day one, but maybe that's that grasping the nettle thing, Ian, that thing of like, I'm here to get something out of this, so I'm going to use every single day to prove myself. And rather than let yourself get tired over the course of 2 or 3 days, do it while you're fresh. Get up the road, get on with it.
Absolutely, it sets him up for the rest of the week, and yeah, he'll probably be looking to get into the breakaways in the coming days to add to his points tally. Looking at the bingo rider, Alexis Guérin, looks a bit of a KOM hunter. So he's taken out the mountains classification at the Giro de Sicily and the Coppa Bartoli already this year. So perhaps just wanted to get ahead, maybe try and pick up any points that were left over. I don't think there were any left over on that passing of the KOM that time, but obviously wants to get across and perhaps kind of participate in that competition. It looks like he kind of specialises almost in going for the King of the Mountains jerseys.
Well, they've got 6 kilometres now, the lead of our race, the 3 leaders have, before they go through the finish line in Alta. And right on the edge of the city right now, skirting around the edges of it. The peloton just backing off a little bit. Just under a minute now, the gap to our 3 leaders. Back to this lot. So as I say, just 6 kilometres now until they go through the finish line for the first time in Alta. They'll see 2 laps to go, 2 clockwise laps, both taking in that same Boskop summit that they went through just now. So they know it now. Next time up it, if these guys are still clear, Fergus Browning will have a good measure on that. But now all of the riders, all 105 that I think we've got in the race, or at least started within the race today, will know that run-in to the Boskop summit. Oh, hello. A little bit of a shake of the head there from Lewis Bauer. I wonder if the Kiwi is just starting to tell a little bit here. An Aussie, a Kiwi and a Norwegian out front in this race right now.
Not surprised he's beginning to feel it in the legs. He's won our sprint today, he's won our KOM points, and looked like he was driving the breakaway pretty hard as we entered the circuit. But Guérin now just completely stuck in the middle, and this is the situation that he really didn't want. He wanted to get across that gap as quickly as possible, but right now it looks like he's going to be reabsorbed by the peloton, perhaps. Not going to hit that climb again until around about 26.5 kilometres to go, so it's got a long time before we get back round to that climb.
Yeah, he's almost been done in by how hard these 3 have attacked as well, hasn't he? Because it's these 3 through their big attacking to go through the King of the Mountains points. They've opened things up at the front end. I think by the looks of it, Fergus Browning is looking round. I don't think he's looking round trying to stay clear of the others. I think he might be looking around for a bit of help. It would be quite nice when there were 6 of them there. It was a nice sized number. Now there's just 3 of them left. One of them, by the looks of it, is now sitting on as well in Lewis Bauer. I think Fergus Browning might be looking around hoping he might get a bit of help. Hopefully for him, it won't be this lot coming back up. Romain Combeau back on the front. If DSM Firmenich get something out of today, Ian, they're going to have to have an extra slice of steak for Romain Combeau tonight, I think, at the dinner table, because he has done a lot of work. His kilojoule count for the stage so far is going to be pretty high.
It is. He's accumulating that TSS for the day, getting his training score up. and I'm sure they'll thank him at the end of this one if they do manage to take out the stage today. I'm sure they'll just be wanting to use as fewer riders as possible to bring this one back. They're already a rider down, only 5 starters today. As we said, Leknesson didn't take the start today, so only using up one will mean that there'll be 4 riders to lead out Alberto Danesi. I'm sure that's who they'll be riding for today. Perhaps Dinham in great form and has a fast finish on him as well, but if Daunese gets over those climbs, then I'm sure he'll probably be the main man being led out to a hopeful stage win today from them.
Best sprinter in the race on paper, do you think, Alberto Daunese?
On paper, I would say. I would have thought so. But given slight uphills towards the finishes, it's going to suit kind of a strong man as well. So, I wouldn't rule out kind of almost anyone, really. Johannesson's fairly fast finisher. Baroncini's a fast finisher on a tough finish. So, Eiking even... there's quite a long list of strong men that can finish fast when they want to.
Yep. Well, that gap is still 30 seconds back to the other 3, who were the second half of this 6-rider break, who've been clear for most of the stage. This is the front of the race right now. Johan Ravnoy, Fergus Browning and Lewis Bauer, the virtual leader on the road. Bauer, again, now starting to go through again and do a few more turns as well. Possibly now knowing that it's less likely that Trym Brenseth is going to come back, his Norwegian teammate in the Groupama FDG Continental team. This is that second group. Torbjorn Ruud at the back there for the Norwegian national team. Ben Perry, the Canadian for Human Powered Health, in the middle, looking over his shoulder all the time, because I think there we go. Look, you see, Trym Brenseth also looking around. I think they know that they might be getting some company at some point, or they're not sure when. Still saying there's 30 seconds between, 25 seconds between them and the peloton. Johan Ravnoy, this is back to the front again. Ravnoy swings off.
It's that situation where Bauer within the leading 3, all the time the gap was around 10-15 seconds, he can always use the excuse of, I've got a teammate coming across, I'm going to sit on. But once it goes to around about 30 seconds, he can't really use that excuse anymore. Certainly when they're out of sight, the other riders are going to cotton on to that one and say, well, no, they're not coming back, are they? Give us a turn.
That's that wonderful numbers game as well, isn't it? Because in the 3 behind, Trym Brenseth can be saying, no, I can't. I've got a teammate up the road.
You end up with a situation...
says his teammates...
Both the Groupama riders not working,
yeah. No, my teammate's coming. He's definitely coming. He's trying to get across. And behind is going, no, I can't chase my teammate. He's up the road.
Which is why it's always so important. It was drummed into us whenever we raced on the road. As soon as the breakaway was over, kind of 6 or 7 in numbers, then try and get at least 2 riders in there. And certainly in big breakaways, you just want as many guys in there as possible. If that's the if that's the day's aim, like it clearly was for Groupama today.
Well, this is Johan Ravnoy's first UCI race this month, actually. He's had a quiet time since July, end of July, where he rode a 2.2 UCI stage race in Poland. And it looks like our second group is so far now consistently knowing it's going to go that I think that was Trym Brenseth just wheeling over to the edge to have a nature break from the second group. So that might indicate the way things are going for that second group. Yes, it is. In fact, it was Torbjorn Ruud who's decided to have a pee-pee at the side of the road while he waits for the peloton to catch him, which they are just about to do. And when you look around and your own breakaway companion is sitting up to have a nature break, you're not going to get much more out of him. It might be curtains. That's the 1K to go, Gantry, as you can see. Probably don't need me to tell you that, everyone, but just to mark where we are on the road. The road definitely slightly climbing at this point as well, too, because it is a rise up to the finish in Alta. Let's see how much of a rise it is over this final kilometre, though. So that's 3 of our 6 back in the fold, leaving 3 out front. Johan Ravnoy, Fergus Browning and Lewis Bauer.
On paper, the final kilometre looked quite similar to actually the KOM that we've got, the Boskop climb, and right now it looks very similar. Some see an attack as well coming on these steeper slopes, about 400 meters into the climb, and then it flattens off ever so slightly up to the finish line. So almost just as hard as the KOM point of the day.
Yep, you're just hearing our camera. I think that was probably the camera operator, the cameraman, I think, by the sound of his voice on the back of the motorbike there filming. And the reason he's shouting attack, of course, is probably to tell the motorbike driver to speed up a little bit. They're always on the edge of being as close as they possibly can to get the best shots without aiding the riders too much. We've got a real ace team on this race. It is an ASO race, for those of you who don't know. They're the organisers of the Tour de France. And they now organise many of the world's biggest races, including the Vuelta. And lots of great one-week stage races as well, including this one. And it's part of the reason, I guess, why over the course of the last 9 years, the Arctic Race of Norway has grown so much. ASO are very good at promoting and developing a real kind of plethora of different kinds of races. Here we go. First time across the finish line, there is bonus seconds available. So here, hanging on here to see if Lewis Bauer can get it. Lewis Bauer is going to get some more bonus seconds, which means, there he is. He's now got bonus seconds. He's got 3 bonus seconds at both of the points so far. So 6 seconds gathered today for him. He's having a good day out. He's won everything so far. Let's just work this out, Ian. It should still see him quite high on general classification, because if he can stay in the main pack come the finish, I can't see him winning, but you never know. There are 10, 6 and 4 seconds on the line. So even if he finishes somewhere in that pack, he's still 6 seconds up on everyone else. So it'll be very good for his general classification. This is the front end of the peloton coming to that line, and boy, are they not far behind, eh?
Yeah, down to 40-odd seconds now, and it's good for the riders, good for the spectators. We get like almost a dress rehearsal. See that big sweeping corner between 300 and 400 metres to go, but a very safe, fair finish. Nothing too technical about it. That kick up with around about 900 metres to go. So it should be an interesting one, quite a hard one to control, unless you've got some super strong lead-out men to carry it through those steeper slopes and kick on over the top of that one and take it all the way to around 200 metres to go, I'd recommend.
So Lewis Bauer taking both of the bonification points of the day and taking the first one across the line. There is another sprint bonification point next time across the line. Again, 3, 2 and 1 bonus seconds. This stage, this opening stage of the Arctic Race of Norway, very much back-ended with lots of seconds available. 1 lap to go until the next one. And do you know what, Ian? It's not beyond the realms of possibility. I'm sure that's what Lewis Bauer is now thinking, is try and keep this group of 3 clear, obviously to the finish, but at least minimal. It's quite possible they could stay away to the next point across that line. It's a 15, actually I make it slightly, it's about 14.5k this lap. Not impossible, and he looked like he's sprinting well. He's quite a snappy youngster, isn't he?
He really is, and they'll be quickly back round to the next Boskop climb. That's coming with 26.6 kilometres to go, so they'll be back round to the foot of that one before you know it. But I'd have thought we might see some action from behind on this climb, perhaps. Looks like the DSM rider is finally running out of steam a little bit, but it does look like Uno X are well kind of positioned just behind. Little Trek coming to the fore as well. There's going to be plenty of teams wanting to take this one on from the DSM rider as he finally gets overtaken. What a sterling job he's done today.
Yeah, I wonder if that is the last we'll see of him. He's slotting in there. I don't know where his teammates are, but they are, as we've heard, a man down, because the defending champion in this race, Andreas Leknesund, who rides for DSM, that's a tight squeeze through there. Crikey, it's a pretty open, wide corner that you could see well into, but there was no crash protection on that post in the middle there. Thankfully, the riders all completely wise to it, and they'll, on a multi-lap finish as well, they will at least now have an eye on that and know what's coming next time around. Beautiful sunshine. So nice to see the sun beating down on the Arctic Race of Norway. This is when this race is at its very best, when it's got to the mottled cloud and sunshine, really picking out all the contours and colours of this beautiful landscape. These 3 persist. The Australian Fergus Browning, who does look like he's rocking and rolling a little bit more here, the Trinity rider. And then taking over, or looking like he's taking over, Lewis Bauer, who's won every single bonification point today. Both the bonification points, 6 seconds now gathered in total, and the first King of the Mountains point as well. So he's the leader in the King of the Mountains, he's the leader on the general classification, he's the leader in the sprints classification, the points classification, I should say, for that blue jersey right now. And probably the most aggressive rider, the most active rider so far as well. If that is the case at the finish, he will be wearing the red number tomorrow. And I think he'd be pretty worthy of that too, the way he's ridden. All being the youngest rider in the race as well.
So he hit this climb once again, where we saw this breakaway the previous lap split in half. Interesting. Looks like it's a little bit calmer this time up. Perhaps a little bit more fatigue in the legs. Browning not wanting to go on the attack this time. But I'm sure Bauer's keen to take more points at the top of this one.
Do you know what I hadn't pointed out, Ian, while they're taking in this slope? They're all teenagers, these three. I actually thought Johan Ravnoy was older than that, but Fergus Browning and Johan Ravnoy, both 19. A bunch of kids riding up the road in front of them here, and the kids are proving the best of the lot at the moment in this breakaway. An 18-year-old and two 19-year-olds bossing it at the front, although I have to say at the moment looking at each other a little bit too as well. And here come the boys in red and yellow. Frederick Vernes, that national champion in there. And Martin Urienstad, interestingly enough, right at the back as well. He's the smallest, the shortest of those Uno X riders. And he does have a pretty good uphill sprint as well, Urienstad. Sorry, Ian, I interrupted you there. What were you going to show us?
I was just going to say, it looks like these breakaway riders feel as though this is the final point of the race, that they're going to be able to take up any points at all. So just watching each other, and also, yeah, look like they're fairly reluctant to just tow Bauer again up to the finish line and let him out sprint them again. So playing it a bit more tactically this time, as we see Browning going on the right-hand side of the road.
Yeah. It's only about, I think, 900 metres now to the top. Browning is, maybe he's got a little bit more snap left in his legs than his form has been indicating, because he's looked a bit wobbly, should we say. Bauer's definitely chasing him, and I think Ravnoy at last might just be telling out a little bit, Johan Ravnoy. Although he is trying to come back on. He's a strong lad, this Norwegian. My suspicion is we're going to be seeing these three a little bit more this week after today. Would not surprise me. Johan Ravnoy on. Has he got anything left though? I've got a nasty feeling they're about to kick again. Let's see.
Looked to me like Bauer's still the one with the strongest legs, the strongest snap in those legs as well. So probably the other two realised that. Browning rolled the dice, went for a long one, but wasn't able to shake Bauer at all from the slipstream.
Ian, I don't know if you noticed the road there. When we see another shot of it up close, it's got that snowplough grating down it, and it grates in the direction the road is going in, thankfully, but it is literally like kind of grooves down both sides of the roads. Have a look next time. And sprint is open. Browning is going for it. Bauer! Wow, he's done it again. He's done it again. Wow. He had managed to hang on. Right. Well, the next time through there, it's an all category, which means there's 6, 4 and 2 seconds available. But he should... Well, I say that. No, it depends... It depends which way the points go, because whoever goes through that next time, if it's not him, and it's not one of our breakaway riders, which is actually highly likely, they'll draw level with him, because he's got 6 seconds now in that Peacock Jersey King of the Mountains classification. There you go. Can you see the road there? Can you see the grating, the lines along it? I believe, this is what I was told last year, that is the kind of mark of the snowplow, having been across there so many times, clearing the road. Thankfully, it kind of grooves. It's in exactly the same curve as the road itself, of course, but interesting.
Makes sense. I was going to say, considering the winters that these roads have to put up with, they are in excellent condition. And coming from two people that ride on the UK roads, so we're looking on jealously.
Yeah, they do look good, don't they? Even one of those snowplow grooves. Just lock your tyres up in there and just ride it. Right, this is nice to be looking down from above to see the riders who are moving up. A few purple jerseys of Burgos Biache moving up. They have Cyril Barth, the Frenchman, who rides for that Spanish team. They also have Eric Fagundes, the Uruguayan, only Uruguayan in this race, fresh from those World Championships. He was active as well, I seem to remember. Eric Fagundes, he might have been... No, he must have been in the men's elite race. I remember mentioning him during the race as well, so that might have meant he was somewhere near the back, but I remember picking him out in my commentary, Fagundes. But he's got a good sprint on him as well, so be interesting to see who Burgos Biache are thinking of in the purple. So Bauer has sat up, actually. Maybe that's a clever one, Ian, because he knows he's leading on bonus seconds. He doesn't... These two are hanging on now to stay out there and try and stay out there as long as they can. But with Bauer going back into that peloton, I'm presuming he'll try and sit there, will he, to the finish and try and finish as close to the leader as possible. About general classification for him.
I think it's sensible because I can't see them maintaining the gap to the finish line this time with that final climb up to the finish, the amount of time that they lost on that previous climb. So it just makes sense for him to go back and like you said, if he can cross the line within the peloton the same time as the winner of today's stage, then it puts him in a great position in terms of the overall. And looking how many bonus seconds there are on offer on these stages, if he gets in the breakaway again tomorrow, he'll put himself in an excellent position for taking that yellow jersey.
Yes, absolutely. So 22k to go. When they go through the finish line this time, they will see 1 lap to go. They're off at the eastern end of our course right now. In fact, right up alongside the quay, the cruise ship terminal that takes visitors in and out of Alta, our finishing city today. I'm pleased to say, actually, the road here is pretty much as wide as the road they've ridden here on as well, so plenty of open space for open racing. These are the 2 remaining riders from 6 who were clear all the way through this opening stage of the 10th edition of the Arctic Race of Norway. They've ridden all the way up the E45, going northward, as all 4 of these stages continue to do so until they reach Nordkapp, the North Cape, on Sunday afternoon. These are the remaining 2, Johan Ravnøy of the Danish team, Team Coop, and the Australian Fergus Browning. 2 teenagers who've combined well at the front of our race today, but one man leads on general classification, and there's his name. Bauer, the Kiwi, who has won every classification point so far. This lap, the next punctuation point to get to is going to be the bonification points, 3-2 and 1 seconds, 3-2 and 1 points on our finish line this time. I can't believe Lewis Bauer is going to have the strength from that pack to sprint out for them, but you never know. Depends what happens with these 2, of course. These 2 who are also now battling for high positions in that King of the Mountains classification. And they might well be thinking about trying to pick up a few more points ahead of the next few days. Ian, what is your thoughts on that finishing climb now that we've seen it already? That finishing rise, shall we say? Could we be looking at a bunch sprint finish?
A sort of bunch sprint finish. I don't think it's going to be kind of the big lead-out trains all across the road sort of thing, because that kick with around 900 metres to go will probably line things out ever so slightly. It's also a cross headwind. The wind will be coming from the rider's left-hand shoulder. And so you've got a bit of a funny situation here where with the wind coming from the rider's left-hand shoulder, ideally you'd be against the hoardings on the right-hand side of the road as the riders are riding. But the finishing 200-300 metres gently curves to the left. So the shortest route is on the left-hand barriers, which allows the riders to come round you, being protected from that crosswind, which is reasonably strong. So they've got a tricky situation. I think it's going to be the team that has any sort of lead out towards the end are going to be able to do a really good job. Uno X look like they're very keen. Team Jayco Alula positioning themselves very well. Numbers well positioned towards the front of this one. They have Blake Quick by name, quick by nature. Got a good kick on him. Whether he can get over that kind of steeper part at the bottom or whether Stibar's straight back into action, because Stibar in his heyday, this would have been his name written all over it.
Yeah. Zednek Stibar, the Czech rider who is so well decorated through cyclocross and road as well. Former quick-step man, as he was for a long time. And now a key, I guess, road captain and stalwart of that Jayco Alula team, passing on a lot of his experience from over the years down to some of their younger riders, the likes of Blake Quick. In a way, into a finish like this, if Stybar's feeling up for it, he could be the ideal lead out for someone like Blake Quick to pilot him into good position, learning all the time from Stybar and his experience as well at finishes just like this.
He certainly could. His kick, his explosiveness would be absolutely perfect to lead out a rider like Blake Quick, get him over that steeper section within himself and then kick on over the top, line things out, and then, yeah, let the sprinter do their job with 200 metres to go.
And they've only got about 3 or 4k to go. Well, 3k to go, actually, until they're onto the rise to that finish as well again. I just don't know whether the bunch is happy to let these two sit there a little bit longer. Romain Combo has come back to the front, you know, the DSM man. I'm pretty certain it's him who's come back to the front. Certainly one DSM rider has. We're not up close with them right now, such as the very close gap between them and these two. But I think it is Romain Combo for DSM, who are down to 5 riders. Reminder to people watching, only 6 riders per team, not 7 as we quite often find in the Point Pro races. Only 6 riders. Some teams like Little Trek have only got 5 anyway. DSM Firmenich have only got 5 now as well. And Fergus Browning carrying on. These two had a little bit of a chat back there. Johan Ravnoy was pointing something out to Browning. I'm not sure what it was. It was doing a sort of signal like with his hand to indicate, I think, saying, let's get to the climb. Let's at least get to the climb. Maybe. I don't know you saw it, Ian. It was definitely that. It was that indication of, you know, what do you call that? Upraised hand.
Yeah, I think what happened on the previous climb was they backed off and the peloton backed off. I think what the peloton or the teams setting the pace within the peloton are setting a good pace between these climbs and then backing off ever so slightly so that their fast men are getting a slightly easier ride over the actual climb and then kicking on again once they're over the top. So I'm sure Ravnoy was pointing out that if we get to the climb, we're probably going to be able to hold on all the way to the finish line and go for that sprint point once again.
They've just turned away from the Altieva River, which comes inland from that port, the cruise ship terminal I was telling you about. The riders just skirting inside that and now turning away from the river again to go back towards the centre of the city of Alta. As I say, the most northerly city of this size of population in the world. What a lovely place to live as well. Absolutely stunning. I just saw something in the background there, Ian. I might look for it next lap, actually, if it's not kicking off too much. It looked to me like a ski jump ramp. In fact, I'm not certain that's what it was. And we'll go back and have a look for that again as we watch Johan Ravnoy wants to hang on. He is, I think, trying to get to that King of the Mountains point. Because, as we know, it's an all-category King of the Mountains point. No, hang on, this time through. No, it's not. That's next time through. My apologies. This time through, it's 3, 2 and 1. But even so, he's been second or third in the last 2 King of the Mountains. Ravnoy was also second at the first bonification point today, so he's been pretty good, the Team Coupe rider.
These two hanging on. I'm sure they're throwing their hat into the most aggressive rider as well award, Pot, and also the award that is voted for by the spectators. I'm sure there'll be, as he's finally dropped by Browning now.
Well, I've said that already, Ian. We'll see, yeah? We'll see. No, it does look like that's it. That's it for Ravnoy. And Fergus Browning, this young Australian teenager, 19 years of age, doing a really good ride today for Trinity Racing. You mentioned that kind of shop window of this week, in particular at this stage in the season. And there he is getting caught. So here we go. Here we go. Astana, Kazakhstan up on the outside. First time we've really mentioned them so far. Uno X in the middle, as they have been throughout, but I think they're going to get company. And there's going to be new riders, new teams we haven't seen so far. Dark green of Kern Farmer, Q36.5, one rider in the middle there, that's silvery grey and black. And Little Trek moving up too. So bonus seconds here, 3, 2 and 1 available on the line. This will be really interesting because this isn't about surviving breakaway anymore now. This will be very much about general classification, these 3, 2 and 1 bonus seconds. Highly unlikely they'll be taken by anyone who's had any so far because they've all gone to Lewis Bauer, Johan Ravnoy or Fergus Browning. That's that final right-hand sweep before the long finish straight. It's like we're turning onto the Champs-Élysées here, isn't it, at the end of the Tour de France. There's the long sweep and the long straight. Here we go. Oh, very quickly coming up to the line as well. Frederic de Vernez is the Uno X rider. He's probably their fastest finisher, but he's got company on the lines as well. Is that Dylan Terns coming up on the outside? No. I tell you who I think that is. It is, as well, by the way, Stevie Williams. Pretty certain that was Stevie Williams taking that. We'll have that confirmed for us.
That certainly was. He's got a good finish on him. I think it's Guillaume Martin on the right-hand side of the road as we looked at it. So, yeah, the GC boys coming up and taking those sprint, those bonus seconds because, yeah, like you said, they've been so important in the past editions of this race, and the GC guys know that, yeah, kind of 3 seconds, 2 seconds could be the winning margin come the end of these days of racing.
Wow. It doesn't look... I mean, let's watch it again. It is pretty certain that Stevie Williams of Ismail Premier Tech on the right. I'm not sure who the Astana rider is. It might be Zeitz in the middle. And de Vernez releases... Oh, actually... Yeah, that is Johannesson. Tobias Johannesson, isn't it? For Uno X. Right in the middle. So we've just watched Tobias Johannesson take maximum points on the line. Just ahead of Stevie Williams, the British rider for Israel Premier Tech. I don't know if you saw who got third there, Ian. I'm just making a note of all this. There we go.
Scaroni.
There we go.
Oh,
there we go. Of Astana, it was Scaroni. Right, so I missed who that was. It wasn't Zeitz at all. Christian Scaroni, one of 3 Italians. The Astana team this week made up of 3 Italians and 3 Kazakhs. Right, but that's a very clear indication. We now know who Uno X are working for. And I wondered whether it might be this man, Jonas Gregor, because he is an up-and-coming stage hunter, at least in races like this. They're only Dane this week. He's the only Dane surrounded by 5 Norwegian riders, but no doubt about it, Tobias Johannesson is their pick. The question is, I guess, Ian, as that was 1 lap to go, we heard the bell being rung there. Is that going to look anything like what we see at the end of this lap?
I think that sprint was the guys putting their hand up saying, I'm going for GC this week.
Yeah.
Whether that's the guys who are going for the stage win today could be slightly different. As we see now, problem for one of the Uno X riders. That's Gregor.
That's why, that's why he was dropping off the back.
He'll be a key man for the lead out, who they've now probably lost. It's going to be a big chase to get back in with only 12.5 kilometres to go. They're rapidly approaching the Boskop climb again. They'll hit that with 11.5 kilometres to go. So only around 1 kilometre before they hit that one once again. Whether we see any attacks this time round or not, be interesting to see. But all the teams gathering up behind Uno X, trying to get into a good position for this climb. Now,
Cofidis coming up. Thomas Champion is the tall rider in the middle there, the first of them, wearing the red gilet by the looks of it. Looks like they've got Simon Geschke in behind them. I wonder whether they're thinking about Guillaume Martin for this actual finish. He has got a decent sprint on him as well. Looks like they're bringing Gregor back in for Uno X as well, by the looks of it. Yeah, this is Gregor here. So they are still thinking about his general classification point, because it's been worth sending Truls Nordhagen back to bring him back in as well. They are definitely concerned about the Danes' place on general classification, I think.
Yeah, Nordhagen riding up for this race, so he's normally on their development team and getting his opportunity to ride up into the continental squad. So yeah, taking this opportunity, as we see now, Burgos rider going on the attack.
Yeah, this is interesting. It's not quite working just yet, though. It's causing a little bit of a split, though. Certainly thinning things down now that the race is all back together. And they have, according to the top of our screen, 1 kilometre to go now to the top of the climb, which will now have all category points. The Boskop summit. It's exactly the same summit this time round, except the points have been lifted this time to be 6, 4 and 2. So as I said, anyone who wins this one will draw level with Lewis Bauer on the lead of the King of the Mountains points. I'd have to go back to the UCI rulebook, Ian, to figure out then who wears that King of the Mountains jersey. I've got a nasty feeling it might go to the person who's won the highest category climb, but then it could also be that it goes to the person who's won the most number of climbs. I don't know, I'll have to check that one. I might leave that to the commissaires to work out. This looks like Antoine Toluc, who's coming up for Lidl Trek, unless I'm mistaken. Certainly fully wrapped up as well. So we are getting attacks on the climb as well. Before they even get to that point, it's not Toluc, actually. I will retract that one until I've figured out who is at the front. They are so well wrapped up, lots of these riders still with their arm warmers on, and numbers covered too.
So difficult to control with only 6 riders within the team, and then as we saw from Uno X, 2 riders out the back. So we see a strong attack now coming out, almost going double the speed of our previous breakaway attemptees.
That's a big move by one of the Team Flanders Baloise riders. Really going hard for this King of the Mountains point, knowing that it's double points. By taking this, it's only 1 King of the Mountains point, but it suddenly draws you level with the lead, and he's got it. Fantastic move. That's caught them all off guard as well, by the looks of it. I'm just trying to work out who that was from the front.
I would have thought he would take that jersey. Normally on count back, it does go to the highest category climb, or the final climb of the day for that jersey. So, yeah, be interesting to see as we hit now. Just 10 kilometres to go as we see another attack from Israel Premier Tech now being covered off by DSM, and Jaco Alula covering this one.
In the sunlight, just looking to see this. It might be the figure of Daryl Impey, actually. The former South African champion. Yeah, just looking to see. It's a bold move, though, with just under 10 kilometres to go on this final lap of 2 around Alta, the city of Alta, on this, the opening stage. Yeah, it is Daryl Impey. Former South African champion, stripes at the base of his sleeve. For the 38-year-old, one of the oldest riders in the race. Not the oldest, though. Oldest rider is Danny Navarro, the Spaniard, 40 years of age, racing for Burgos Biachi. And certainly, Daryl Impey, one of those riders. He was in the early break, if I remember correctly, as well, in the men's elite race in Scotland, just 2 weekends ago now. He was in the break, I think, going over the top of the Crow Road, in actual fact. They got to there, it kind of merged and then started again. No, it was before the Crow Road, I should say. They were stopped, actually. Of course, the men's elite road race was stopped due to a protest. This race, Ian, last year, as you might remember, stopped briefly for a protest on a long, straight, open section of roads, and protesters... actually, I seem to remember they set light to something on the road as well. Again, slight, in a way, without making a sort of political comment about it, slightly disappointed as this race was targeted, because this race is one of those that's trying so hard to do more to reduce the particularly the carbon footprint of this race in particular. It's a great move by Impey. He is growing that lead, Ian.
I think he realised that there wasn't the numbers behind at that point once they crested the climb to really take control of this one, and it's taken, what is that, nearly 3 kilometres for Jaco Alula to kind of get back together and actually get into some sort of team shape to be able to try and chase this one down. And yeah, real opportunist move there, and yeah, using all his years of experience to hit out with this one. But looks like he's got good power in the legs as well. Just 7 kilometres to go now, 9 seconds the lead over that peloton led by Jaco Alula.
Yeah, really big hit out by the former Tour de France stage winner. Impey's looked back there and seen a quite flattened out peloton as well on this closing, this second and final lap of our finishing circuit in Alta. He is looking good. Well, he was one of the vast majority of riders in that men's elite race up in Scotland, in Glasgow, who was a DNF. Very, very small numbers got to finish on that circuit. Understandably, due to its attritional nature and multi-laps as well, but this is a very good move by Impey. I think he's being helped by the looks of it, Ian, by it does look quite flat behind that peloton as well. There's a bit of a calming gone on there. Good timing.
I think they're all worried with such small numbers within each team of going too early and then getting swamped with around 900 metres to go once it kicks up. You need firepower for that lead out. You need a good number of guys left for that final climb. And so everyone's hesitant now with 6-7 kilometres to go to really go all in and try and bring this one back. And yeah, as you say, it looks like a little bit of confusion behind, not one team really wanting to go all in to try and bring this one back. The only thing I would say is a solo rider like this putting in a huge amount of effort, big watts to continue this speed on these draggy uphill little sections of road, probably will come back rather rapidly as soon as we hit that final climb. But give him much more time, much more than 15 seconds, and he'll take this one all the way to the line.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess that's what comes with that experience that I'm talking about with Daryl Impey. Turned pro back in 2008 for Barlow World, ridden for so many different teams. Barlow World, Radio Shack, MTN Quebecer, NetApp, Orica Green Edge, and then of course it became Mitchelton Scott. Spent most of his career really with the Australian team, and now has been a key player, certainly a developing key player, looking after younger riders, of which there are a few at Israel Premier Tech. It's not quite the retirement home that some like to badge it as, but he is one of their older and more experienced riders who's definitely hung on to his snap as well. He's got a good dig on him and a good sprint on him. We nearly had a crash at the bottom of the screen there. I don't think we did, but there was a proper swirling bubble where we've now got a gap in the middle of that pack. Jaco Alula now at the front, Ian, and leading the chase. You think it is about Blake Quick, yeah?
I would have thought so. Looking down their list of riders. In terms of the overall, I'm sure they're going for Eamon Grundal Janssen.
Yeah.
Good up-and-coming youngish rider. But I'd have thought on a day like today, Blake Quick would be the man.
Do you know what? Eamon Grundal Janssen, I think I would have said that a couple of years ago, but it's very strange. He's just gone quiet the last two. In fact, it was his time at Jumbo-Visma where he sort of, I think, was used quite well by the team, but didn't appear to be quite as strong as he was prior to that. And his career's just gone quiet. He's still very consistent, really strong, but I'd have had him down a few years ago as someone that would be right up there to win a race like this. And of course, now I've said it, he probably will. But yeah, he's their only Norwegian rider. They brought him here for a reason, I'm certain, and he'll be keen to show himself in a way that he wouldn't have got the chance to do at Jumbo-Visma either, possibly within that team. So let's see. He did have a very fine sprint finish on him, Eamon Grundal Janssen. Came incredibly close to winning the Tour of Denmark a few years ago as well, and that's why I'd have had him down for something like this. But let's see. Keep an eye on him. He rides with the colours of Jaco Alula on his back.
I'm good friends with his coach, so I'll drop him a message tonight.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out. To find out where his form is at. We'll find out maybe on paper in the next 3.5k. Look at that, 3.2k to go. The big drive coming from Cofidis now in the late afternoon sunshine. It's just gone 6 o'clock in the far north of Norway in Finnmark County, where the whole of this race is. My name's Jez Cox. I'm alongside Ian Field, and we're bringing you a really exciting finale to this race, where we have the former multiple South African champion, Daryl Impey, out front riding for Israel Premier Tech. Brilliant late attack, not long after our remaining 3 riders of the 6 who were clear had been caught. And he's now out front by himself, thundering away on the bike as well, not looking back much either. 15 seconds the gap, and the chase being led by a combination of DSM and mostly Jaco Alula.
Got a little bit excited then. The GPS flicked up to 20 seconds, about 400 or 500 metres to go, but I think it was just a blip back down to that 14, 15 seconds that it has been for quite a while now.
Yeah.
Groupama grouping quite well just behind Jaco Alula, so it'll be interesting to see who they might want to be going for, whether that is Noah Hobbs, the young Brit. Very fast finish on him, so interesting to see who gets the nod from all these different teams today up on this interesting final kilometre.
This is a really fine ride by Daryl Impey at the moment. He is a beast, isn't he? He's pushing a monster gear by the look of it as well. He jumped clear with extreme force anyway, and has just persisted, just mashing that gear over. He's not the most elegant of riders, but boy, does he know how to hurt himself.
Absolutely.
3
years
riders
of
left
experience.
there. Yeah,
years
I'm
of
sure.
experience turning over that gear, using a bit more torque than kind of leg speed, but he's doing the job. He's hanging on really well now, down to 9 seconds. I'm sure he would have wanted to see a slightly bigger gap as he took that look round then.
See, once again, Ian, look at that road surface. It looks like, brushed glass. It's beautiful, isn't it?
Certainly
Absolutely
is
perfect.
what we could only dream of.
Yeah, I would just ride up and down that if that was my local road. It looks lovely. There we go. We Brits can only dream, exactly. Remarkable, considering it's covered with snow for so much of time as well. So Impey hanging on. Watch that massing peloton behind, though. It is the Norwegian national team who are leading at the moment. Q36.5 coming, perhaps thinking about Alessandro Fideli, who's been fideling with his bikes multiple times off the back of that peloton. He's done a couple of bike changes, all sorts of tweaks going on. And here come the silvery colours of Q36.5. Kilometre to go, last kilometre. And he is going to get caught, Daryl Impey, but that was a fine late attack. So Q36.5 in the silver in the middle. Dark green of Equipo Kelm Farmer off to the left. Maybe thinking about Francesco Galvan, their fast man in there. And now come Uno X again, but it's messy, Ian, this, isn't it? Oh, there we go. And that's why it's messy.
That's
one of the Burgos Piace riders. Yeah.
Baroncini's gone down, so one of my picks for the GC. It did happen in the final kilometre, so be okay in terms of the GC overall, not losing any time. But see riders just bumping and barging all the way up this final climb.
Yeah, and they're spread all over. There's very little colour blocking as well. There's individuals spread all over. That's Ednik Stibar, I think, who's looking. One of the Norwegian riders, I think it is, Norwegian national team riders, has taken a bit of a flyer at the front. That is one of the Jaco Alula riders looking back. I'm looking to see if that is Stibar, but he's looking for Blake Quick. Blake Quick is sitting about 10th there in the middle as well. Cofidis now up on the outside. Is it going to be that climby type of finish as well that we thought it might be? Here we go. The sprint is open, and it looks like... Is that Fideli right in the middle there as well? Noah Hobbs off to the right, if I'm not... No, he's in the middle there, I think. This is going to be... Groupama FDG Continental, who are leading through the middle. Here comes Dainese. Has Dainese got a left for the F? Yes, he has. Alberto Dainese has taken the opening stage of the Arctic Race of Norway, popping up from, well, seemingly nowhere in only the way the best sprinter in the race can. We had him down as that, and so does the finish result. Alberto Dainese taking stage 1. That was a bit close, Ian, wasn't it? Not least because we're looking around the corner to see them with that front shot.
I think it's a really tough finish because it dragged all the way, and the wind coming from the riders left slightly into them. It made for quite a tough slow sprint, and you needed to come off the wheel reasonably late, as we saw with Danese. Left it super late, kind of the last 100 metres, only really coming to the fore of that one.
There we go. DSM, Alberto Dainese is going to have to be thanking Romain Combo for all the work he did during the day. The man who won a stage again of the Giro d'Italia this year is making that his speciality, winning stages of the Giro, Dainese, despite the fact that he's not necessarily the name on everyone's lips as being one of the top sprinters in the world, Ian. He's very good uphill as well, because he's not a big guy.
He's not, but he wins bike races. So it might not be one of the biggest names in the sprinting world, but he picks up wins, and it's probably why Tudor have signed him for 24-25. So, yeah, one of the interesting names that team have managed to pick up for next year, as we see a replay now of the overhead of that sprint.
Talk us through what you made of this, Ian. I made a bit of a hash of it. It was so chaotic.
It was actually Team Coupe rider that led it out with, we think it was Noah Hobbs on the wheel, kicked reasonably early. And look where Dainese came from, a long way back on the right-hand side. But what he was being sheltered by all the riders on the left-hand side of the road from that bit of wind. And yeah, just fastest on paper and fastest in real life right there. Quite convincing in the end, but tricky one with that wind coming from the left, but the road also curving to the left.
I think that was Clément Champussin who was third there as well. It was the RKS Amsic rider. We talked, didn't we, Ian, about this being a weird mix of different kinds of riders who would come to the fore as well. I would never have thought I'd see Clément Champussin, who really I would have down as much more of a climber, fast finishing climber, up there against Alberto Dainese, and a brilliant second place there for 19-year-old Noah Hobbs of Great Britain. That is fantastic for a rider who comes from just down the road from me. Look at these trails as well, absolutely beautiful. Norway and the far north of Norway, absolutely perfect for mountain biking, of course. If you like your slabs, it's not far off your well, it could be any of the best mountain biking locations in the world with smooth rolling slabs of rock like that. Spectacular. Well, Dainese is going to be in that Midnight Sun jersey. He's taken the 10 seconds bonus on the line. Noah Hobbs will get the 6 seconds as well. So that also means, presuming that Lewis Bauer finished in that group, which I think he did, we'll check that one back, he will be level on time with Lewis Bauer, as long as there were no gaps in there. It wasn't quite as hard up to that finish as I thought, but we have had a weird mix. There you go. It was Clément Champussin who was third. Alberto Dainese, the leader, ahead of 19-year-old Hobbs there. Clément Champussin in third, and it was Marc Rustenga, as we thought it might be for Little Trek. Their sprinter, 23-year-old Spaniard, Marc Rustenga, in a very multinational Little Trek team this week. Here's the front end shot of that again.
Dainese getting close, really low over the front of that bike. Just thinking almost about aerodynamics, but Noah Hobbs, that was really strong. He went with quite a long way to go. He came off the wheel of the Team Coupe rider who went super, super early. And to do that with no team help from Noah Hobbs is an outstanding performance from the young Brit.
Absolutely. He's grown a bit since I last saw him. I've seen him and I've commentated him on lots of local and regional crits and things over the years, and looking ever very much the classy international road sprinter Noah Hobbs. But fantastic ride by Alberto Dainese, taking his, most of his wins have been big. As I say, he's had 2 Giro d'Italia stage wins. We'll just roll back through this. That says Johan Ravnoy taking 5th there.
That's the GC.
Sorry. Oh, here we go. Thank you, Ian. I literally looked up at my screen and saw it. Yes, thank you for pointing that out. That'll be why. Bauer there sitting. Was he 3rd? Do you know what? I've looked up too late. I was actually looking down at my Dainese stats. I looked up that. Thank you.
Yep, we've got Darnese leading from Hobbs and Bauer on the same time. Ravenoy up there in 6th place overall. So those bonus seconds really made a difference when it came to the GC. But obviously not enough to take the yellow.
The favorite, the pressure was on you, but you managed to win. I suppose it must be good to be back in first position.
Yeah, it's been a couple of months without racing after the Giro, but I've been training really well. Today a bit of pressure. I was let's say almost the only sprinter from the World 2 teams here, so I had to deliver, and yeah, it was unfortunate that we lost already Andreas due to fever. He really wanted to defend the title of last year, so this morning he said that I had to win for him, and I did my best. All the guys rode really well, and the circle was not easy to be at the front. We were getting really boxed in every time, and in the sprint I was maybe around 15th position with 300 meters to go, so I thought it was not for the win anymore. But then when I had the space, I could pass the guys, and I'm happy that I finished it off.
Yeah, because I suppose it must be difficult to get back into racing after a long break and get the things working with the team again.
Yeah, but to be fair, I really worked hard in this summer period, and I knew the shape was there, but I was really stressed about not having the space to sprint, because there were a lot of young guys pushing in the final kilometers, and a lot of stress, a lot of danger. So actually I took it a bit of a break after the roundabout to try to find the space, and yeah, I was also lucky that I got out of the middle, because otherwise I couldn't sprint. But yeah, I think the guys did a good job, and it was nice to be with the team again after a couple of months training home.
The bonus is the jersey. You will be the leader of the race with that beautiful midnight sun jersey.
Yeah, probably I won't keep it till Sunday, but hopefully another rider from our team can get it. And as I said, yeah, Andreas didn't start today because he was not feeling good, but we still have Kevin and Matt, who's still going pretty well after the tour, and yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Thank you very much. Congrats. Grazie.
Questions there from Seb Piquet. Interesting there to hear Alberto Danese saying that he's not thinking he might not hang on to the jersey, maybe taking a bit of pressure off him. I don't know, Ian. Looking at tomorrow's stage, the categorised climbs will come in the first, 40, 50k. After that, it flattens out, and we've got to rise up to the finish in Hammerfest tomorrow, having left Alta. Might have a good chance of hanging on to it tomorrow as we watch again the final kilometre. Let's have a look at the placement of these riders. I'm just looking to see the colours of Clément Champoussin and Arkea Samsic, because that was a really fine third place by him. Can't see him right there. I can see Mark Bristenga, the Lidl Trek rider, off the right-hand side, just holding wheels back there as well in this final kilometre.
I think he was on the right-hand side, just where it opened up there. He managed to come through, and he was carrying really good speed on the climb. See him right in the centre of your shot. Get squeezed there by the Q36.5 rider coming back. And then it was his teammate that launched over the top. And Stibar, considering that's his first race back, looked like he had good legs leading over the top of that climb and able to kick on over the top of it as well. Just a shame that Blake Quick couldn't get over that climb in a good position. Just got boxed in at this point. I think at this point in the race, you just had to kind of sacrifice a little bit to get out. So you see Darnese just pushing his way through desperately on the wheel of the human-powered Half rider, and then it finally opens up for him. Even Stevie Williams up there trying to get up there, trying to pick up some bonus seconds. But Darnese, by far the fastest, and yeah, we had him down as the fastest sprinter, and he proved just that. But like you say, tomorrow, I'd have thought another stage that suits him, and he should be able to hold on to that yellow jersey tomorrow, but perhaps going to struggle come kind of Saturday, Sunday stages where the climbs can be a little bit longer, and then towards the finishing kilometres of the stages.
Yeah, just watching, crikey, we're seeing a near crash in the background there as well, between one of the Jacob Alula riders. Just from the front there, it looked a little bit more difficult for Alberto Danesi, but from on high, from above, that actually made that look quite easy. He said, well, as I'm the only sprinter here from a world team, so I don't know what the likes of Blake Quick and others might think about that, but I think he means somebody who's won big sprints in big races. But he's not a big winner, is he? Above UCI point 0.1 and above level, this is his, fifth win for Danesi. He's still only 25, but they've all been pretty big wins as well. There it is again, confirmed for you. Kevin Ledanois was 10th. Antonio Angulo was the Burgos Biache rider in 9th, so 2 Spaniards in the top 10, along with Marc Bristenga. Scaroni, it was, of Astana, who was 7th. Stevie Williams. No, I'm doing it again. This is the general classification. Ian, you've got to stop me when I do this. I'm reading from the bottom upwards. That's the general classification. That's the GC. Noah Hobbs sitting 2nd. And Bauer, on account of the 6 seconds he scooped up out there, sitting on 3rd on the general classification. Clément Champuissin picked up, of course, 2 bonus seconds. So he sits 4th. And then we roll down through Tobias Johannesson, who also picked up 3 bonus seconds out there. Didn't see best of the Uno X riders in the end at the finish. Just looking down, it was Martin Urienstad down in 8th place, just ahead of Marco Tiza and Colin Joyce. The first of the human-powered health riders, Colin Joyce, the American, in 10th place. Proper multinational top 10 that stage today as well. 2 Norwegians, August Jensen and Martin Urienstad, in 7th and 8th. So the opening stage of 4, stage 1 of 4, in this, the 10th edition of the Arctic Race of Norway, has been taken by Alberto Danesi, self-appointed best world team sprinter in this race, and you can't deny it. You can't lie with him. You can't argue with him, because on paper, that's the way it's looked. Extremely fine sprint by Clément Champuissin, who, when we saw that shot from on high, seemed to just weave his way through that group from quite a long way back. The rider in red, riding for Arkea Samsic. Antonio Angulo giving it everything to try and get in that top 3 in the purple of Burgos Biache, but just getting beaten there by Marc Bristenga and Clément Champuissin. So Alberto Danesi, the first rider up on our podium, and as we always do in our digital coverage, we'll be able to bring you, by the looks of it, all of this podium presentation. The stage winner first of all, and Tur Hushot, as he was 1 year ago, off to the left-hand side, just helping the riders up and down. The first ever winner of this race back in 2013. There's the stage classification again, not the general classification. That gives us an indication of who those favoured sprinters are within their individual teams. Marco Tiza, as we thought he might be, for Bingol Wallonie Bruxelles in the bright yellow. This shot looking eastward by the looks of it, from the river, looking a bit further inland. That's the first look we have at our Midnight Sun jersey this year. The bright yellow to the top and the fading kind of egg yolk orange to the bottom. Not unlike the Saint-Michel kit, in a way, in its colours, representing the midnight sun present at this time of year in the north of Norway, of course. To Hushov, perhaps seeing a rider in his ilk, in Alberto Danesi, fast man, strong man that can win in a tough finish like that. Good day for the breakaway today, Ian, wasn't it? And that was a really impressive, I thought, a really impressive late attack by Darrell Impey. It wasn't like he was just given leash. He ripped that lead himself, didn't he? And then hung in there.
That was perfect timing. When it had gone really hard over the top of the climb, there was a slight lull. It's that age-old thing. If you're hurting, everyone else is hurting, and he went on the attack once it slowed down, and held a really good gap all the way until that very final 900 metres, that final kick up towards the finish line, and was brought back rather rapidly, but perhaps bodes well for the rest of this week.
Now, blue jersey is also going to go to Alberto Danesi because he got 15 points on the line. As always with these points classification jersey, it is very much weighed towards the finish, despite the fact that Lewis Bauer picked up 2 sets of those sprint points. He only had 6 points compared to Danesi's 15 in that blue jersey, but of course that will roll down the blue jersey and be worn presumably by Noah Hobbs tomorrow, which will be nice. I need to find out what ABN stands for. Now, I know a lot of his family, teammates and friends would be probably watching this, so whoever knows what ABN stands for, let me know. I've always known him as Noah, so ABN stands for something. Let me know, folks, would you? I would love to relay that to the fans at home. And there we go, the first look at that beautiful peacock jersey for the King of the Mountains leader. That's Vincent van Hemelen. He was the 22-year-old, there it is confirmed for you, who is on the same number of points as Bauer, but he won that Super KOM, the all-category KOM, the third ascent of our main climb. Question is, will we see him trying to defend that over the next few days? Because actually, to be level on the same points as Lewis Bauer, he's had to use a lot less energy to do that. I wonder whether we'll see him. He had a great turn of speed, didn't he, when he went as well?
He certainly did. He certainly did. I'm sure he'll be wanting to pick up a jersey across the course of this week, but yeah, right now, Dalnese picking them all up. We'll go to wait for that KOM, but I feel as though the Balois rider will take it on count back. Van Hemelen.
Yeah. So Alberto Danesi is the best young rider as well in this quite smart-looking white leaders jersey. It's a bit different to the normal ones. It's what do you call that? The baseball T-shirts when you've got different coloured sleeves. There's a name for it, isn't there? It's a style of T-shirt. You know what? Come on, Ian. You're down with the kids. You're younger than me, aren't you, as well? You're supposed to know these things. What do you call that? It's called a... Well, I'm wearing one now that's like it. It's called a... someone will know. Somebody tweet me the name for it. Baseball T-shirts where you've got different coloured sleeves and a same coloured... Let's see who gets in there first. Someone tweet me that, please. It's called a...
I'll put you out your misery with Noah. It's Noah Alfred Bruce Hobbs.
So N-A-B Hobbs. Thank you for that, folks.
Yes.
That's gonna. I wish they could remove that because that's gonna mess me up every time I see it now as well. I'll never remember all that. Right. So Johan Ravnoy is, I think, by the looks of it, our most. Yes, there you go. Prix de la combativité. Most combative, most aggressive, most attacking rider. I have to say I find that a little bit of a shame for Lewis Bauer.
All that attacking right at the end just about paid off for the rider.
Yep. Nice to see the prizes spread around young Ravnoy. It's been a day for the teenagers, that's for sure. Alberto Danesi, the extremely old 25-year-old who leads... he leads our young rider classification, which I've said this many times, Ian, and you tell me, am I wrong? I don't like that.